3 of Nomad Live. I'm your host, Nomad. And listen, guys, we have a packed show tonight full of a bunch of interesting people, interesting guests. We have a new member of our team that we will introduce tonight. Just a lot of information. We're going to talk about a lot about the depth chart, the Bears depth chart. We're going to talk about some position battles in the camp. We're also going to talk some trade talk about different defensive ends and maybe some injury concerns about Chase Young that we have a person here to help us with that. So looking forward to talking about that. Also, you guys, I want you guys to look forward to pencil in, don't write it in ink yet, but pencil in Sunday night at 8 around the same time. We should be ready to debut Nomad at Night. It's going to be a really fun show. We're going to have a bunch of interesting people on there with me, and I cannot wait to do that show for you guys. So without further ado, let me introduce my first guest, our first guest, Mr. Shawn Sierra from SportsZone Chicago. How you doing, Shawnee?
Nomad, what's up, Papa? How are you?
Man, I'm great, man. How you been doing over there? What's going on?
Man, any happier, it'd be illegal, man.
That's what I want to hear, man. So how you feel about everything that's been going on with the Bears recently? So I haven't really got a chance to, outside of talking to you in your show in the chat, I haven't really had a chance to talk to you about how you felt about the draft and before that free agency, the pickups that we got. How you feel about that all together?
Big fan. I'm a big fan. I like, people got to realize it's more than a 1-year fix. You can't get everything this year. So people who think that people who complain about they didn't get this, they didn't get that. Well, again, it's not a 1-year fix. You got to realize that. And Ryan Poles knows that. So I like what he did. I like a lot of the free agent signings. They're definitely depth. They definitely help improve the defensive line. And trust me, now that the secondary, because secondary was a strength at the end of the year last year, and that was with no pass rush. So any improvement in the pass rush, and believe me, that bar was set very, very low, was going to be an improvement, going to really, really help that secondary. So I like what he did. I love the competition he's created at tons and tons of positions, which is what we're talking about today, from offensive lines to secondary to linebackers to backup linebackers, the wide receiver room, running back room. I mean, it's really weird as a Bear fan to have a general manager tell us what he's going to do and actually do it.
Yeah, and absolutely. Before we go further, let me introduce the newest member of the Nomad Network, newest member of the Nomad Live team, my man Triple R. Man, how you doing, bud?
Man, I'm glad to be here. Big up to everybody in the place. Thanks for welcoming me, and I'm just trying to contribute what little I can to this great, momentous movement that's building we got going here.
Man, I love to have you here, man. We're gonna do some great stuff over here. We're gonna do some great production. That's the small side of what we're gonna do, but it's a lot of conversations we've had already in the, before the show that we're gonna do a bunch with every member of our team, man. We're gonna highlight everybody and really give them exclusive opportunities to really shine and showcase what they're capable of doing. So, man, I love you, man. I'm glad to have you over here with us.
Back at you.
Okay, you guys got anything for Shawn before we bring another guest in? Nothing? Crickets?
Not right now.
I'll just get everybody.
Shawn just hit it all.
All right, let me bring the other guest. Let's bring our other guest in. Mr. Brick by Brick himself, Bragzilla right there. How you doing?
What's up, boys? No crickets with me. I'll probably talk too much. Just tell me when to shut up. I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I saw you as counterclockwise production. So does that mean Nomad Live is really evil Damon? See what I did there? That's about the most clever thing I'm going to say tonight, so I better get some credit for that one.
He's a wordsmith.
You shut your mouth right now. Rags, man. Hey, man, you know what? I want to tell everybody just to give everybody clarity. Before I ever even did a podcast, I found Braggs on Twitter, that Twitter space that you have, right? Remember that first time I came in there?
Yeah, they all kind of blur together.
I probably did about 4 or 5 different times on there, but yeah, that's the first time I really ever heard myself. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, you kind of got a crazy voice there, man. You know what I mean? And anyway, ended up doing podcasts, but I would credit Braggs for being welcoming to me, man. And I learned things about him that night to really expect his football takes. And I've been following him since. And, you know, he claims he's not a football guy. He's just a stadium rah guy. But he's fooling you guys, man. He knows a lot more about football than what he leads on. So don't be BSing people, Bragg.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's the bait and switch. If you just tell everybody you're an idiot, then they don't see it coming when you pull out the genius, which is limited. But I try to bring it my best. It's been a lot of fun with CHGO and Nomad. You're always in the chat, and we appreciate that a lot.
Man, I'm glad to be there, man. Just getting footprints out there. Before we go any further, I want to basically bring this guy. If someone can bring Mason in here, please. Somebody, please. There we go. How you doing, Mason?
Not too shabby. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Now, Mason is I want to make sure I say this. You know what? Introduce yourself, Mason. What are your credentials? Because I don't want to bust them up for you.
No, absolutely. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I hate throwing that around. Honestly, it feels pretentious, but yeah, I work a lot with a lot of athletes, a lot of everyday people too, and throw my hat in the ring when things come up. Did a podcast last year talking about Justin's AC shoulder separation, talked about David Montgomery's various injuries, things like that. And you usually do it on the Bare Bones show that I host along with Danny Meehan.
You know what? I'm glad you said that because I'd have messed that up big time. But I really respect Mason and his expertise in that area. But not just that. The more I listen to Mason and the more I watch his takes on Twitter, he's got really deep football insight, and that's not to be sneezed at. And so I didn't ask him to come here just because he's got this, this sports science expertise behind him. He's really good at at evaluating football and football talent. So it's just, to me, he's like the perfect storm of Bears football analysts. He can tell you about injuries. He can tell you about, position versatility, anything like that. I really respect where he comes from and how he comes across with that kind of thing. So I'm glad you decided to come on and be a part of the show, man. I hope you can really open up some eyes. I don't know how much you know about that Chase Young injury, but it worries me, man. And I really can't wait till we get into that part of the show, man, because I think some fans need to hear some uncomfortable truths about that.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for that introduction. I mean, I need you to do my biography. That was awesome. But yeah, the Chase Young stuff is kind of scary. I know it's nice and easy to throw a jersey on him on an edit on Twitter and pine for that, but there's reason to be concerned for sure.
Okay, let's just start with Shawn. Already let us know how he felt about free agency. Braggs, free agency and the draft. Braggs, how do you feel about everything? Postseason, the free agency signings, draft picks, UDFAs, anything you want to throw in there. Overall, how do you feel about it all?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me after the draft was over was I really didn't anticipate them building depth. I knew they'd be able to put out a starting roster on paper going into week one that would be much better than what we saw last year. But the amount of holes they had in this team and no depth at all last year, it just surprised me that once the draft was over, it's like, damn, they added a DB, which you could argue they had other areas of need. They added a running back. You definitely argue there's other areas of need. They added a linebacker, and so they're continuing this best player available, or it appears that way. But just in general, I mean, you could argue running back room, solid, 3 guys that are solid. Wide receiver room's really starting to build up now. When you compare it to last year, feels night and day. They had Robert Tonyan, so, a tight end room that's respectable with Cole Kmet, who had like the 3rd most touchdowns any tight end. Linebacking core, put a lot of money into that and draft one. And you got Jack Sanborn coming back. I thought the secondary was the second biggest bright spot behind Justin Fields last year. You had a DB in the 2nd round of that. So now all of a sudden, yeah, we all know the defensive line is still a work in progress. And that's going to be what we key on as Bears fans, because it's the last missing link, even though, I do think the offensive line still has work to do. But even then, I'm just talking about on paper, the depth actually looks decent, which that quick of a turnaround from 12 months ago, I'd say that's a pretty good job so far for Ryan Poles. Obviously not a finished product, but a really good step in the right direction.
I can't disagree with anything you just said there. I actually, after thinking about it a lot, I actually argued with a guy on Twitter that said that we are not a contender and all that. You know what? The truth is we don't have the 53 set yet. And so I'm not going to reach out there and take a swing at how many wins, but I want to say upwards of 10, 10 or more. Yep. But I'm going to wait because I really think we vastly improved. We're going to get into the depth chart and we're going to see, and we're going to break down some of that stuff. But I think we vastly improved. To me, the only, I wouldn't say a hole, but the only question marks I have on the roster is really a spot or two on the offensive line, maybe. A lot of people are bugged about the center position. I'm not, but I just want to see competition at both tackle spots. It was not going to be any competition on the right side, but I want to see Braxton get pushed. I want to see Alex Leatherwood over there, give him a run at the correct side of the football, which is the left side for him. And I see that. I really don't. I'm not gonna kid you, man. I don't really see any weaknesses on the roster other than that. So that's just me. Mason, how do you feel about everything that's happened this postseason with the free agency and the draft?
I think Poles was handed a very rare opportunity, right? You had a situation where you get the first overall pick and you still have a quarterback that you think can be your guy of the future. You don't see that very often. Usually who's at pick number one, like looking at next year, when whoever's at pick number one, they're taking the quarterback. So when you have that and you have the opportunity to, what I feel like Poles did, and kind of split the difference between planning for the future, but also being able to surround Justin with stuff to see, okay, what do we have? I hate the idea of excuses, but there were some excuses last year that you could give Justin and the offense as a whole, right? I mean, you had wide receivers out there that shouldn't be on a depth chart. Let's be real. By the end of that season, you had an offensive line that was horrendous. So what do? You go out and you trade for a DJ Moore that's going to help in those intermediate routes, the exact area that Justin needs to thrive in, right? You end up being able to draft a guy in a Tyler Scott that can really take the top off the defense, exactly like Justin wants to do and be that big game hunter. You get a right tackle that's going to be really solid on the line. You get a guard and Nate Davis that's going to be able to protect the middle, because that middle, Justin got really struggled with pressure up the middle. So being able to take that away really helped. But you also were able to get picks for next year, because just in case Justin's not the guy, can you parlay those 2 first rounders to go get someone? Or if he is the guy, now you have a flexibility. Can you go after a wide receiver that you need? Can you go after, a key defensive player to help build that? So he did a great job, I feel like, of splitting the difference on those two. And when you look at the schedule that's coming up and the weakness of that NFC North, you're going to be able to make some noise. And no, you're not really pushing for anything larger than maybe a wild card berth. That's really all you need when you had the number 1 pick last year.
Mason, now that you got your vocal cords all warmed up, I really want to hear your take on Chase Young. I was going to wait a little bit longer before we got into that, but damn it, I can't wait, because I want to see and hear what kind of insight you have on that injury in particular, because what I was led to understand based off information I saw on the internet was it was a multiplier kind of injury. It was an injury of 2 different kinds in the same knee, and what I was told, they had to reach into the opposite knee to get material to help that knee, the knee that was injured. And so I don't know all that stuff, all the detail about it, but if you can give us and all these guys that are in the chat just some insight on that, man, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually starts a little further back than even his ACL that he had November 14, 2021. So if you go back the year before, in 2020, he actually had a right inguinal groin strain. So basically what that means is there's the adductor group, which is right on that inner thigh area, way up there where it attaches to the pelvic bone. And he had a strain there in week 3 against the Browns. And he was sidelined for 1 game. But when you have something like that, you have to ask, okay, why did it happen in the first place? And then what does it do later? And when you have it to that area, it's really going to create a lot of compensation. And you can see that it literally a year later, almost to the month, you end up having this right ACL tear, grade 3. So it's a partial tear. It was hanging on by a couple threads, not completely torn, but you still really should repair that if you want to play professional football. In addition to that, he also had a patellar tendon rupture. That tendon is the one that connects your kneecap down to the lower leg bone.
Jesus.
So it was rough. You rarely see that because the mechanism of injury that you get and basically how it happens for an ACL is very different than how you get a patellar tendon rupture. That's a rare case. You do not see that very often. And that creates a couple problems. One being, as Nomad just alluded to, if you're going to do a reconstruction, you can take it from a couple different areas. Usually it's the same side patellar tendon, the same side hamstring, or you can get cadaver basically from a dead person. Get a graft from there. That's not the best one. You don't usually do that unless you're old and you don't want to have to worry about it.
Right.
But when you have to take a patellar tendon from the opposite knee because he injured the one on the same side, now it's almost kind of this weird, like, yes, it's a part of you, but it's not a part of the same side. And so now you're actually creating an issue because you still have to heal from the side you're taking it from. So not only does he have to recover from this ACL, and you have to recover from the patellar tendon, but you also have to have the left side heal on top of that. When you also layer on the fact that for a patellar tendon, a lot of times you're wearing a brace for as long as 8 weeks, about 2 months. So that's going to reduce how quickly you're coming back from the ACL. And now that's going to make it more difficult. In a normal ACL reconstruction, really they're showing that you're probably only about 75, 80% recovered by 1 year out. And you're really only at 100% by year 2. And that's because there's all these issues with bone bruising. There's issues when it comes to your proprioception, or basically your body's awareness of where that knee is in space, the brain to muscle control, and quad strength. All of that really takes about 20 to 24 months. So, and that's with a normal one. So now when you take in this patellar tendon rupture, that's real funky. And that's why he really didn't play until those final 3 games of last year. And even when he did, he was playing about 70% of the snaps that final game. He wasn't really producing. It's not super surprising because I don't know how he was really able to operate with the leg the way it was.
Wow. Just listening to you just crystallizes how dumb I really am, man. This guy is really intelligent, man. And I learned a word while I was researching this called atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to explain that to people, go ahead.
Yeah, so atrophy basically is another way you could say is muscle wasting, or basically the muscle just getting really weak and getting small. So there's a difference. You can lose strength without a muscle actually getting smaller. Once it gets smaller, it takes a lot longer and it's significantly harder to build. That's hypertrophy, the opposite of that. Getting bigger, getting bulkier in that muscle belly. So anytime you have an injury, you're going to get atrophy. When you get a surgery, you get more atrophy. When you have swelling, you can even just about 5 to 10 cc's of liquid, which is like a little like cup, that can reduce muscle output by as much as 50%. So when you have all that, you end up looking at people who have ACL tears, you end up seeing that one leg just looks smaller than the other. That reduces your capacity for strength, for power, and what you're ultimately able to do. So now you really have to question, where is he at? Because one of the ways you get rid of that atrophy is with some of the strength work that you do, but he probably had to table a lot of that because of that added patellar tendon rupture. So my guess is if you really take a look, he's going to have a much smaller quad muscle, much smaller hamstring on that side. And that's going to take 2 to 3 years to really equal the other side. And that's if they're doing it right. It's surprising how mid a lot of these training rooms really are. Honestly, their whole thing is just get guys in and out. And there's not enough hands to deal with all the people that are in there, even someone who's as important to the team as Chase Young would be.
Wow. Before you answer this next question, I want to tell you guys in the chat, get your questions ready for all our guests. Anything you may want to ask Mason, anything you want to ask Shawn, anything you want to ask Bragg, or anybody else on the show, start firing them, and hopefully we'll have them saved and we'll ask them later. But okay, let's just cut to the chase. On a scale of 1 to 10,
unintended.
let's what would you rate the level of risk from 1 to 10 to make a trade for him right now?
Yeah, if 10 is like ultimate risk, I'm putting that at an 8. It's something that you have to be, and I think that's why he hasn't been traded. I do think Washington wants to move on from him because you look at their defensive line, they have so many guys. Sweat, also, you're going to have to pay him soon. But you kind of want to see what Chase is going to bring, because as of right now, I'm sure teams are just lowballing them, right? I mean, a former number 1 pick that teams are probably offering you at best a 3rd rounder for. So, and that's because there's a lot of risk that goes along with it. So my guess is they want to get him on the field. They want him to produce a bit just to make teams feel like, okay, like he's better than we think he is. And hopefully that they can ship him off and that he can pass a physical for that other team as well.
Wow. Let me stop talking. You guys got anything you want to talk to Mason about? You want to ask him about that injury and that risk with Chase Young? Because I know a lot of people, I really like Chase Young, but I feel really froggy about that situation. And I'm not surprised they haven't made a move to pounce on him. But if you guys got anything for him, shoot.
Yeah, I guess I got Mason. I guess my question is, when you guys talk about taking muscle, or is it ligaments from one side of the knee to the other?
Ligament. So
ligament.
When you look at it from like the kneecap downwards, there's that white strip. You're taking a bit of that tendon away from there in order to put that in the knee.
Okay, so my question is, why is it better to take the muscle from your own body as opposed to the cadaver, or why isn't it why would you want to affect the other side of the other leg on your own body when you could just go to a cadaver? Like, I would think that would be standard operating procedure unless it's a faster recovery when it's your own muscle or own ligaments, I should say.
Good question. So the recovery is a little tougher when you take it from yourself, whether it's hamstring, whether it's the tendon, but it's more likely to stick because it is yourself. Antibodies, all that stuff are less likely to attack it. It's going to be more likely to mature, and it's really just stronger. It has a less likelihood to re-tear it than you take it from a cadaver.
Okay.
I think my question, Mason, would be, I know you can't speak on him specifically, but with the injuries and the recoveries that he's had, how will that long-term affect his ability to do what, makes him him? The bend and the flexibility and the speed and the strength and all that.
It's definitely going to have a pretty robust effect. That's one of the reasons I brought up that original injury, that groin strain he had a year prior, because now you're looking at a cascade effect, right? You're saying he had this originally, same side, now he's got the knee and the double knee for that matter. So what else is going to be going on, right? Do you have ankle issues pop up? Do you have back issues pop up? Do you have compensation where now the other side, which you had to take a bit of this tendon from, right, in order to make this work? Like, I had my ACL done and I still get right where they took my that tendon away from me, a pain right there, just because of how that affects the biomechanic of the knee. So ultimately, it definitely shortens the lifespan of your career, unfortunately, and it can also affect ultimately like how much you can do at any given point in time. It really boils down to how patient you're going to be, because kind of like I alluded to earlier, they're going to get these guys out there as fast as possible. Like, you only have a certain number of years that you have normally, let alone with an injury. So these guys want to get out there as fast as possible. The teams want them out there as fast as possible. You're not going to wait 2 years. You're just not. So you're going to get them out quicker. And when you have that, it's going to definitely put some stress on those joints more so than you want.
Wow. Mason, this is great information, man. And I just immediately thought about that report that came out about all of the different, where they rated all of the different facilities and doctors and staffs of the different organizations. And I just looked it up. And the Washington Redskins got the very last grade. They got an F. They're the 32nd ranked team in the league. Their training staff is ranked the D31st. So that's also concerning.
They're the Commanders.
Well, they don't
Commanders,
even have
Commanders.
They don't even have an owner right now. So.
Can't be any worse than the Bulls one. Oh, that's another podcast. Never mind.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or I won't make a Sox joke on the show. I promise, Sean. I'm sorry.
Don't.
I think ultimately when it comes down
real. If you look at that report you were just talking about, the Ravens were also ranked really, really low. Which team had tons of running back injuries? Which team had their stud wide receiver Bateman have a Liz Frank injury? Which team had Lamar out multiple weeks? It all connects.
So Sean, Sean or Braggs? Both. Let's start with Sean. No, let's go Braggs. Would you make that trade, GM, Mr. Brick by Brick? Would you make that trade?
No, I just don't think the Bears are in that spot. I mean, it's the same reason they didn't draft Jalen Carter, right? It's a different, reasoning for the specific player, but there may be a team out there that has the luxury to take that risk if the price is right, depending on what you're giving up. You saw what the Vikings DN cost. It wasn't that much. Obviously, Chase Young's a bigger talent, but with this injury risk, maybe it is a 5th round pick that all it takes just to get him off the books in Washington. But are the Bears in a position to make that kind of a trade where they're still trying to build up their roster? Now you're bringing in a guy that's a question mark. They're not. That's why they didn't draft Jalen Carter. Obviously, his is more background questions than injury question, but it's the same scope for the Bears. They're not in a position to take luxury on. They need guys that can play and guys they can rely on. So, as nice as it sounds, like you said, Nomad, you trade him on your team on Madden and it looks nice. It's not how reality works. So, I just don't see Ryan Poles making that move right now.
Shawn.
No, don't do it. You know what? Here's the reason. We got draft capital. And one of the things that I've said was here's the issue. If you can't get that that 3 tech that you need or the edge, then build up depth. All right, build up depth because we have 2 first-round picks next year. All right, we got capital next year. All right, and I hate rooting for a team to suck, but come on, Carolina, let's go. I need you to lose as many games as possible because now the higher we get, all right. Matt, just think. What if we get the number 1 pick again next year? What are teams going to be throwing at us for Caleb Williams? Teams going to be throwing the house at us for Caleb Williams, and you can drop down a couple spots, and you might still be able to get the top defensive player in the draft, the top edge, or the top 3 tech, one or the other. But you're still going to get more picks. So, and you can parlay those like Houston did. I thought that was a great thing what Houston did, jumping back up from 12 and going back to back, getting their quarterback, getting their edge rusher. And, now I'm not saying I'm not putting them in the Super Bowl by any stretch, but it makes their team a lot stronger. And if you can do something like that where we add maybe a Jackson Smith and Jigba and whoever the next 3 tech is, or maybe a DN, an edge rusher and a 3 tech, man, now you're cooking with gas, man. And now our defense is set. 'Cause I think our defense is going to be good. We got a lot of guys. The one thing that Ryan Poles did, again, he laid out the plan. What was it? Volt, violence, length, and was it tenacity? Like these guys got motors, man. These guys got motors. And again, they might not be all world like Jalen Carter's projected to be, but they can be good. They can be good rotational players. And if you add a stud edge rusher, a stud 3 tech next year, man, this defense is going to be wow. This defense is really going to be something to contend with. Not putting them in the 06 or 85 category yet, but man, they'll definitely be on their way to getting there if they can stay together. You got time. We're not going to the Super Bowl. I don't think we're going to the NFC Championship game. I do think we're going to get to the playoffs, but and that's going to help those guys as well. All right, that's going to help those youngsters as well. And then next year, when it'll be their second year in the same system, they're going to have a marked leap of improvement, just like I think other people on the rest of the team is going to have, being in the same system offensively and defensively. Man, I can't stress enough how happy I am that Ryan Poles is building the team the way he's building it. It's literally textbook the way he's building this team.
You know what, Shawn, man, you got me fired up talking about 3 tech and Jalen Carter because I'm a studier of I'm a studying MF is what I am. I watch tape all the time. And I don't want to get too deep into this before we get into the depth chart, but I can make the case for anybody listening that Zach Pickens and Gervon Dexter may have a higher upside than Jalen Carter. You know what I mean? Jalen Carter is an extremely, extremely high talent. But I see things in both of those guys that project better in the long run than even Jalen Carter. But I'll save that argument for another day. You guys, I would, Mason, stop me if you think I'm any ways incorrect. I think a trade for Chase Young would land us 75% of a player for at least the next couple of years at the minimum. Would you agree with that, Mason?
I would agree with that. You're really hoping that your training facility can do a little more than the Commanders did, and you're banking on the fact that whatever you flip, maybe it's again, I'm not going more than like a fourth or a fifth on that, but that whatever you flip, that the output you get from him is better than that rookie you would have gotten with that pick. So it's definitely high risk, high reward, but it's a low ceiling for that first year for sure.
All right, man.
Yeah, I don't think, bro, I don't think
it's
it's ready for it. I don't think they're ready for it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, even if you do get him, if he plays, how long is he going to play? Are we going to have another Lonzo Ball type of situation? It's the NFL. I mean, not for long. All right, you get one hit. I mean, of course, that goes for anybody, but you don't want to come in damaged goods, and not just that, but how is he mentally as far as that? Because physically, when you recover from an injury, if you're usually ready physically, well before you're ready mentally. So this guy hasn't played in a while. He's been hampered by injuries for a couple of years, and he knows the severity of his injury and what they had to do and what they're telling him personally, as opposed to what they're telling the public. Yeah, where is he at mentally? Is he going to be the same dude when that leg is healthy? But does he trust it like he did before? That I don't know.
I think ultimately it just comes down to, are the Bears going to get a defensive end this offseason before training camp or during training camp? And I do think the answer is yes. I mean, everybody talks about Leonard Floyd and Frank Clark and Jadeveon Clowney and who's the fourth guy that we always bring up out of these four that are – say that again?
Ngakoue,
yes. And ideally for the Bears, we all say, "Oh, get one of these guys on a 1-year deal." Well, that's what we want, but the player wants years, right? They want some security. So, and there will be cuts that come. I mean, Carl Lawson didn't end up working out; he got an extension today or whatever it was. So, but there will be other guys that become available that we're not even talking about right now. And I do think if the Bears can get fortunate enough, find one of these guys on a 2-year deal, that they'd then be willing to come, because 1 year, maybe they'd want to bet on themselves, then they can go get their contract next year. But you give them a 2-year deal with a little extra juice. The Bears have a lot of salary cap money still available this offseason, and they have a lot of another offseason coming next year with a lot of salary cap. So I am completely fine giving one of these guys a 2-year deal. I don't think that's mortgaging the future, even if you're giving them a decent chunk. Because you just it's getting it out of the way now. Because if you want to develop the D tackles, you want to develop Pickens and Dexter, you got to have an edge rush. And I know they've got some rotational pieces, but they've got to bring guys in here to let the rest of this defensive line develop too, or else it'll be a trickle down effect like it was last year where everyone was awful. So, to me, I do think there will be some kind of a defensive end that comes in. I just think Ryan Poles is going to play it calculated like he has with pretty much every move he's made so far, and let the market come to him.
I think a 2-year deal would be better though, Braggs, just because if you're coming from a system that's not, coming from a system that you're not familiar with, if you're in a different type of system or just the coaching, the first year you're really going to be learning the system. And I get it. Most people have probably played, if you're a 4-3 DN or if you're a 3 tech, you played in 4-3s. But it's still a different system, maybe different terminology. And the second year, when you're in that same system, same coach, same everything, it's going to be a whole lot different, as opposed to learning different things, as opposed to being coached, and instead of being taught. And that second year, after that second year, if they don't got it, then then you're cut. And you're allowed to walk. I think a 2-year deal would be really good for them, just so that first year, because if they don't, what if it takes them a little longer to catch on, so to speak, you know what I mean? So that second year, I think, would be good. And again, you don't got to break the bank. Some guys would like a 2-year deal. Again, just gives them a little more stability. And that same thing, that familiarity, being in that same system for 2 years, is going to give them a lot more confidence.
But I'm just saying, if they do got to up the money, it's not the end of the world. They have money.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And if it's, as long as the years aren't long, then you're not mortgaging the future of this franchise.
Right.
You're giving this team an opportunity to develop the rest of their team with an impact player on their defensive line. No, it's not going to be when Khalil Mack came in here, but right now, I mean, they brought in some nice pieces. The defensive end from Tennessee, I think will be somebody that could potentially surprise. I still want to see him in training camp before we start making proclamations about the guy, but I'm certainly excited to see him. But hey, I don't know how other people feel about Jadeveon Clowney. You want to bring him in on a 2-year deal. That's an imposing guy that walks out on that line of scrimmage that other teams got to account for. You say what you want about him, how his career has panned out to this point as a number one pick, but he was a number one pick for a reason because he's an imposing person when he walks out there. And you talk about taking some attention away from the rest of the guys on the defensive line and give them a chance to attack.
Have y'all talked about Bryce Huff at all?
Not yet.
No.
I haven't studied that guy.
I think Bryce Huff is a really interesting guy. Brad Spielberger at PFF actually turned me on to him, especially with Carl Lawson staying. He's a guy that just wasn't even last year used enough, I think, with the Jets. He had 36 QB pressures on only 173 pass rush reps last year because he was just buried in that depth chart.
Wow.
Yeah, Mason.
Wow.
36 QB pressures on 173 pass rush reps.
That's a lot of damn pressures, man.
Yeah, he had a pressure rate over 20%, which is elite. And again, he just wasn't used enough because he was buried. Now Carl Lawson's sticking there. I think he's someone that you might be able to pull away, especially because he's going to be coming up near the end of his contract as well.
I'm trying to think what defense they run there. Is he a traditional 4-3 guy? Is he a 3-4 guy? I don't know what they do down there specifically. So, what's his measurables? I mean, how is he made?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that information.
6'3", 255.
Yep, 255.
And
he was the outside linebacker.
And that's a typical 3-4 guy, but that's another conversation I want to get into a little bit later. Is some of the guys that we have on the depth chart, some of the at least one draft pick that we made, and a couple of UDFAs that we brought in. And I've said this on previous shows, and I said it to Shawn on his show a couple of times. That I think they're gonna display multiple fronts this year. I think they're gonna not just simply go out there in a 4-3 base zone defense. I think they're gonna throw multiple fronts at teams to give them problems. And any defensive coordinator will tell you they're always looking for ways to give an offense problems. And you do that, and you can run out there in multiple fronts, dude. You can really. And some of the guys like we got to get to this depth chart here in a second. But some of the guys that we brought in here recently starting to make me feel that way. And what do you guys think about some of the guys that we brought in recently? Like Noah Sewell is a
there you go. Yeah.
Go ahead, Shawn. Go ahead.
You know what? I like him, and he's the kind of guy that when I watched him, I'm like, okay, he's not really fast. I'm like, okay, he runs a 4.6, but he's that dude that you better not cut back more than once because he's coming. All right, he's that dude that'll ear hole you if you cut back once too many times. He's always around the ball. He's a player. But I like, and I was one of the things that I said on my show was, I could see them using a three down lineman in front, and have him on the edge, or him in a little NASCAR package if it's third down because he's come off the edge in college. He's a good rusher from the edge. So there's a lot they can do with that particular type of defensive of linebacker. So I like him. He's one of those guys that his measurables, if you look at it, they're okay. Nothing stands out at you, but you put the tape on, like that sucker is always around the ball, and there's nothing that you can quantify for that. 40 time vertical bench press. There's just some people that got a nose for the ball, and he does, and he gets there in a bad move because he's not the first one there. But man, he's not the dude to start it, but he's the dude to clean it up, and he cleans it up in a very nasty way. And I like that because that sends because you know who you're playing against. Trust me, I was a running back, and I knew when linebackers were coming. It was 1-2. I tug once, twice. If you have my leg, once, twice, fall because I knew that dude was coming. I can't tell you how many times I felt the body fly over me. All right, and them talking smack. Oh, you lucky 3-3. You're lucky 3-3 because they knew they were going to take the head off. And I think Noah Sewell was the type of dude who's going to take your head off if you cut back one too many times, or if he comes on a stunt. I mean, just think of him on a ET stunt. You know what I mean? There's so many things you can do with that dude. He's very athletic. And he's going to give them. That's one fun toy for Coach Williams to play with on the defense and Flus, because I know Flus is going to have a hand in it too. For those defensive guys, man, you got a lot of I don't know which combo players, or hybrid players. There you go, hybrid players.
Versatility.
Yeah, that you can use and he can drop back in coverage. So all of a sudden you think it's a 4-man front and he drops back, so you don't have to bring in a a second nickelback, so a dime back, I should say. You can have him drop. There's so many different things you could do with that guy. Man, Williams on the defensive side should be giddy, and Getsy on the offensive side should be giddy.
My God, his versatility is amazing, and his speed will trick you. You know, he might have timed a not so good 40 time, but his football speed, that dude sideline to sideline is a blur. If you watch the tape careful enough and watch enough of it, that dude will annihilate you, charging down that sideline, waiting for you to slow up. And like you said, Shawn, if you cut back
one too many times. Well, the thing about him that I like with the jackhammer is they study, so they diagnose the play quickly, and he's not 4.3, 4.4, but because he understands, he sees the play and can diagnose it quickly, boom, he's gone. All right, and it might be a half step faster than a dude who is much faster than him, but you know what? He's sooner. He leaves sooner, and one of the things I noticed, he takes good angles. I was watching a lot of things that, small things like that, good angles, and that cuts out, that saves you time too from being a 4.5 to you can play it with a 4.6 because you take proper angles. So the guy's football smart, and I love the culture that Ryan Poles and Coach Eberflus has built. And this defense, man, the hair on my arm just standing up, dude. I say that on my show all the time, but every time I talk Bears and get deep into Bear talk, dude, I get fired up, man, because I'm excited to watch these Bears prove a lot of people wrong, especially that Mike Lombardi buster.
Okay.
People also undersell the fact that they changed their defense that last year for him. So he was playing in a whole new system, different coaches, all that jazz. If you look at his tape the year before, I mean, some people had him as a first rounder.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, yes, you can't only put, rest your laurels on that. That's important.
Yes. I you know what? I'm putting a pin in that conversation because we're going to reapproach that when we get into the depth chart. But I just want, before we get out of this whole trading conversation about defensive end, I want to gauge you guys' feelings about, like, this guy right here is a typical Eberflus kind of defensive end. He's got everything you want in the defensive end: size, length, speed. I mean, everything you want. Strength. I mean, Danielle Hunter is an absolute beast to me. What would you? And that's a guy that I would think about if we're going to do 3-4 years on a contract. That's the kind of guy you're going to get. How do you guys feel about that? Let's start with Braggs and just go around from there.
Yeah, I think that would be a great pickup. But again, and somebody I thought really made a good point in the chat, like, and I'm in the same boat. I'd rather give up salary cap right now than draft capital. How much is it going to cost to get Danielle Hunter? I know they gave up their other defensive end. I'm losing
Darius.
Yeah, and the price tag wasn't that high. So if it's something like that, okay. But then you're paying them, like you said, a higher year deal. So now you're invested in this guy where they're still on the ground floor building this thing up. I'm not going to be against it if they make a move like that. But, when I look at the free agent market, still has guys available. There will be cuts that either happen now or in training camp. I'd prefer to get one sooner rather than later to let these guys get acclimated to the system and their teammates. So no, I mean, as great as it sounds, like I said, I still got my eyes on some of these guys that are available that we can just put some salary cap money into and save our draft capital.
I feel you. And that Triple R, you've been quiet, man. I know you got something.
Excuse me. As far as trade goes, I'm not interested in anybody really, unless it's like a Huff, who you could get for a 5th, 4th round, maybe. Point being, Poles is trying to keep that flexibility to take the North and not give it back. And part of that includes not giving up the draft capital that he's worked so hard to attain just to get, a 28-year-old guy for a team that's not really trying to contend right now. So when we're in our window to compete, who we trade for now is going to be, 2-3 years older. And we have to pay them. So I'm more of a proponent of utilizing that number 1 waiver wire position and waiting for a DN to come loose that way. Or going with, just young guys and just finding those, those gems and let them develop.
It's a strong argument, man. It's a strong argument. Sam, what do you have on that?
Yeah, I agree with him on that to a point where we know Poles is a great evaluator. This and our scouting staff in general has just been the great evaluators of talent. We were bringing in a lot of good cats lately, and I would want to hold on to that draft capital. However, there is a guy that I'm thinking of, and I wouldn't be opposed to Daniil Hunter either. This is a guy who's had multiple double-digit sack years, and he's a proven player. I don't think that we are able to evaluate the talent, the rest of the talent on the defensive line, like Bragg said, if we don't get someone in there who's able to come in and show those young guys how to play. I think that's important as well. And I think some veteran leadership on that defensive line is needed. And I think that we have the cap space, we have capital to spend. We have the money to spend, so why not spend it? We have to invest in that defensive line. We're not invested in it heavily right now as some of the better teams that are in the league, and I think that's one of the most important positions on the field. So I have a guy in mind. I'm going to save him, though. I had a guy in mind.
I know you probably sound like you was going Justin Houston, probably. Is that where you were going?
Nope. Nope.
All right.
But I think they did invest in the defensive line. It's just you got young guys, and I think I mean look who they signed in free agency. They got the one tech and then Walker, and then look what we drafted with Zach with 2 C's and Dexter. They invested in that. They did invest in that line. They just got to get acclimated to the system. And watching, there's something about Dexter and Pickens. When you look at what was the thing that Pickens said, and I don't know how many people paid attention to this. They asked him, after he was drafted, he's like, man, I'm going to be 10 times better in the league in the pros than I am in college. He goes, because I didn't have the same coach. I had different coaches. And people have no idea if you haven't played a sport, not just football, but you haven't played a sport, and you understand how important it is to be in that comfort zone where you have the same system. And you could relate that to work. I mean, what if you get a new manager every year? I mean, they have their way of doing things, and so it's good. You're never going to be fully comfortable with it because you're always learning it. Oh, next year I got to learn something else. When you're comfortable in a system, and you're you don't have to think about what you're doing, and that's the thing. You guys are football guys. You don't want to think out there. You just want to do. And if you get in that system, man, this I'm telling you, this team could be. This team is going to surprise a lot of people. And I got a crazy one that people are going to probably think I did crack before I came on. But I'm telling you, it's early in the season. We want to make some noise. We want to make some noise.
You were eating too much to be on crack.
All right. Hey, fellas, let's, before we get to, I could talk about this subject all day, but this is my favorite part of the show, this conversation. If we can pull up the offensive depth chart. It's from our lads. I've been studying the ESPN Bears depth chart, and I even went to the Bears official website to look at, they don't have anything. It's a blank. But the ESPN website makes sense. This one invites all kinds of conversation right here, man. Because look, I mean, like let's start at the top. You got DJ Moore as the first receiver up there. St. Brown behind him, Fountain and Reed, who I don't know if they even stand a chance to make the team, but it's an interesting depth chart. And then you come down to Chase, and you see how much they value Pettis. And this is our lads website. This is not the Bears official website. I'll say that again. This is what they are thinking the depth chart looks like for us. Claypool, Pettis, Velus Jones, and Thrick Pitts, who I have some notes on I can tell you about. And then there's Mooney, Tyler Scott, Nasimba Webster, and Aaron Cruikshank, who I think is a kick return specialist. I think that's what he brings to the team. So let me just quit talking. Look at this thing and tell me, circle an area of competition that you think would be worth noting. Let's start with Mason.
It's a position that you brought up earlier that I know a lot of people are worried about, and that would be center for me. Okay. When you combine, Cody Whitehair was having a really solid year before he got hurt. You rewind a bit when he was playing center and he had some snap issues. He's got that unconventional snap style. There's a couple names there that are interesting. To me, Doug Kramer is just on this team he's just here. I don't love the fact that he had a Liz Frank injury. That's really hard to come back from as a big guy. And
Hey,
where you got him in the draft
why
too.
is that? Why is that, Mason? Why is that so hard to come back to?
Because essentially it's a broken bone in the foot. And really, right, the foot's the first thing that contacts the ground. When you generate force, that's one of the first things that you need to push off. Fascial tension, basically all this connective tissue within the body. You need that stable anchor. And when you just have that much weight and that much power that you have to generate, or that you have to receive, right? Imagine you're a center and you have that big nose tackle at Jalen Carter, let's just say, since we brought him up earlier, you have to absorb and stop. That is really hard to be able to do that. And so a lot of those big guys coming off Liz Frank, they kind of keeps happening. It lingers. You end up getting knee issues. So I don't really love that for him, but I do like the idea. And apparently the Bears really like actually Jatir Carter potentially as a guard too and as a backup center.
Mason, I didn't know until you just started talking. I had no idea that it was a Liz Frank injury he was suffering from. I had no idea. I thought it was just a regular, run-of-the-mill injury that he just needed time to rehab on. Now, see, that complicates some things. I don't know how well that guy's doing. I've seen nothing to make me believe that he's going to come back. I mean, that really makes me feel like they may have to make a move this offseason, maybe somewhere after June 1st to get somebody. But look at that guy, Josh Lugg, who plays guard. You know what I mean? Like, what's he doing there? You know what I mean? So that whole conversation about center, I'm comfortable with Whitehair. I'm comfortable with on this, even Lucas Patrick, he's not even a center. He's a guard. I don't know how much sense that makes to you. Talk to me, Brax.
Yeah, I guess that's what stands out to me too. And have we actually heard from what Ryan Poles and Eberflus's plan for this is? Because we all have it as what the offensive line shows here as far as the starters on the first line. But Lucas Patrick was brought in last year to be the center of this team. Luke came in Luke Getsy's offense in Green Bay, and then he got hurt. Cody Whitehair did have a Pro Bowl season as a center here, but it wasn't when this coaching staff was here or this GM. Cody is not their guy, and Lucas is somebody they invested in, this front office, this coaching staff. So, to me, a guy like Cody Whitehair, who's played guard and center, I know Lucas has as well. I think that probably is the competition we need to look at camp, because the biggest issue Cody Whitehair always had was snapping the ball. That was one of the issues he had. And, so we're going to have to see how that goes with his chemistry with Justin. And if he can't get the job done, the ball keeps going on the ground, Lucas Patrick could easily be the center. And then you let Whitehair be the backup to both center and guard because you're kind of having to hold on for dear life with Tevin Jenkins. He's a great talent, but can he stay healthy for 17 games? Unfortunately, I hate saying this, but I highly doubt it. It's hard for anyone, even if you're a healthy player, to stay healthy in the NFL, let alone a guy like Tevin Jenkins of his size with back issues. So to me, it is going to be interesting to see not Kramer, but Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair, who they decide to go with center there to start the year.
I'm agreeing with King Booker World in the chat, man. I don't ever want to see Patrick as a guard. He was horrible, man.
Well, again, it's that trickle-down effect last year, right? You don't have anybody around you. It's hard. It's hard to evaluate anyone. And like Mason said, you don't like making excuses. But it for me, just as as someone that's watched this game for a long time, but just every other average fan and trying to figure this out, how do you evaluate the guys on the offensive line when you got a rookie left tackle who did his best, played every game, good for him, and then the rest of it was a shit show, part of my French, and then, we all know what the receiving issues was and everything else, and it's a first-year coaching staff, took 6 games for them to figure out what kind of game plan they want to do with Justin Fields. There's a lot of different variables that went into the failure of last year, the roster depth being the biggest issue, but there were a lot more things outside of that. So now, yeah, Lucas Patrick did terrible at guard last year, but now this year with a more, potentially and hopefully a steadier line, that maybe might not be the case. I tend to agree, put him at center, but I'm just saying, like, I think this year is going to be a more fair year to evaluate guys, especially, on the offensive line, now that they brought in Nate Davis and Darnell Wright to hold down that right side.
Hey, Braggs, I'll tell you something. Lester Wilfong Jr. came on here last week and perked my ears up like a Doberman pincher because he saw some information somewhere, I guess, that he heard that Ja'Tyre Carter would be taking snaps at center. Did you say that, Mason, when you started? Somebody. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that got me really intrigued, man, because I can see center on him and his body type.
Yep.
And center is a lot more cerebral than every other position on the line, but that's something that really got me, man. And what do you think about it before we move up the page?
If you're asking me, I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm not, I didn't key too hard in on Ja'Tyre Carter last year at training camp. I know he got I think he got some snaps during the regular season, but certainly not enough for me to make like a huge assessment of him. But, those are the things when we get to training camp this year, it's going to be a little easier to like key in on certain things like this. Whereas last year, so many holes, so many new faces, it was kind of like your head spinning trying to figure out, the whole new team. Now this year we have a better idea of how things are going to look, and you can key in on specific spots like that. So if Lester's saying it, he's definitely an offensive line guy. So that's certainly something to keep your eye on.
Well, he's also really athletic too. We're talking to Ja'Tyre Carter. He's very athletic, and I think that'll really, really help in this wide zone scheme that they run. And because if we can get that center down, because I'm pretty comfortable with Braxton Jones, with 1 year under his belt, one complete off season, getting stronger. And if we can get a center, and we're literally able to cut off in that zone, I mean those holes are going to be huge on the zone, on the zone blocking, and we got running backs who'll find them and who put their foot in the ground and get up there. So I like Ja'Tyre Carter's athleticism, and get him some snaps at center. I think the one thing, what did I say earlier? Competition. There's competition in every single position except QB. All right, and that's the way it should be. And I love it. Because you're really. What if we talked about Patrick? Okay, he was hurt. Cody Whitehair had some issues. Okay, well all of a sudden now you're playing for your football lives now, because now you got a whole bunch of people at guard and center and are trying to hang on the team either way, or as a swing guard or different multiple positions. So the amount of competition that is here, it amps up the level of
Shawn, hold on one second. My producer's in my ear. I think we have some breaking news just came off of Twitter.
From the Nomad Network News Channel, we have breaking Chicago Bears news. General Manager Ryan Poles has confirmed that the Bears have re-signed N'Keal Harry to a 5-year, $100 million contract. He also confirmed that Harry will be the Bears' new starting middle linebacker. We will have more on this story at the 11 o'clock newscast.
So did they get rid of no more Edmonds? I mean, no more TJ Edwards? Is that what it is?
What the hell?
He did that because he knows I love N'Keal Harry. I love that dude. And I don't think they use him properly.
He did that just for Shawn.
That was wild.
Nice.
Shawn, for anybody who you need to be watching SportsZone Chicago, number one, he's on at 9 a.m. our time, but we got a running joke going on. I'm picked with him all the time on the show. I come over there just to see if I can rile him up a little bit. But he loves N'Keal Harry, man, and I can remember him. He getting mad as a Badger, man, on Twitter about him not getting that ball enough and them not targeting him enough. And so I used to just pick with him about, N'Keal Harry is just really a linebacker. He's not really a receiver. So that's that's the background on what that's all about. So.
Yeah, like, why not? Why would you throw to a 6'3" guy with a 38-inch vertical who did that in college in the red zone?
I
That
agree.
doesn't
I
make
think he
any
was
sense.
underutilized. But I think he should have been a power slot.
You know, and he blocks too, and he can block. So come on, man, just throw it up to him. He should only come in on third downs or in the red zone, 30-yard line in. All right, just throw it up to him. That's all.
But, hey, we got you good, Shawn. I see.
Yeah, you did. That was funny.
I see you do the Rocky Balboa statue while it was playing. He was in the back.
I was like, Kill Harry. Move over, TJ Edmonds. Move over, baby.
All right, man. So, Mason, man, what do you think about this? Give me. Like I see, here's one. I just want to start an argument. Everybody's already billing Roschon Johnson to be a starter.
Ooh, I was hoping you're gonna go here.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead. Take over.
I don't think so.
My bold take, which may not even be bold anymore because I feel like everyone's now doing this, is Roschon Johnson's going to be your RB1 by like week 6. He just fills in so perfectly into what the Bears need as their starting running back. No offense to Khalil Herbert. If you go back to my days on Chicago Audible, all that stuff, like, I mean, I was the leader of the Khalil Herbert hype train, and then he went off on a couple games when Monty got hurt, and, you know, that's all she wrote in terms of his running efficiency. But in terms of a running back, that can be multiple, right? He can run between the tackles, outside the tackles. He can pass block for you, which Khalil Herbert, unfortunately, is not the greatest at. He's just not very good pass blocker. It's horrendous, actually. And so now you have that flexibility where, let's say you need an audible at the line. You can't do that as well with Herbert. If you have a run, you want to switch to a pass, you're worried you're going to get your head knocked off if you're Justin. But you can do that with a Roschon Johnson. Bringing in also just the leadership, right? When people went to the Texas campus, obviously they knew about Bijan Robinson, but the fact that coaches and just everyone within that facility said, wait, no, but Roschon Johnson, the fact that he was brought up constantly without having to be asked, that just shows like the stand he had in the locker room. That shows the presence that he had. And that's just a guy that, I mean, you're going to be able to, I think, to be able to lean on. Now, it's going to be a running back by committee. Deontay Foreman's going to get his, Khalil Herbert's going to get his. But I wouldn't be surprised when you look at some of those snap percentages that Roschon Johnson's going to start to eke up, especially as hopefully this pass game opens up.
I know somebody wants to argue with him about that.
I do, because with all the versatility that he has, and I love the intangibles and the leadership skills. However, I was watching him today, and I just saw a lack of explosiveness. I saw he doesn't have quick feet. He doesn't change directions as fast as most NFL running backs do right now. I looked it up. His longest run of the year was 39 yards. He had 52 yards that game, 9 carries, and that was against Oklahoma University when they blew them out 49-0. Now I'm not poo-pooing on him or anything because I think he's a great back. I think he's a great pickup, but I think he's best suited for short yardage and maybe a red zone guy. Because of his versatility, he has the ability to run, catch. He's good in pass protection. He can run the wildcat. He's a former QB, so maybe he can pass out of that wildcat formation. I saw him play some fullback. I even saw him flexed out wide and at the X and the Z, and they were sending him out on routes. So he has that versatility. I think he also has some value maybe in the fourth quarter as a closer. Because of his physicality and, maybe if we're trying to protect the league at the end of the game, I think he would be perfect for that, to wear a defense out with his running style. So, and then that also saves him and gives him the ability to play all 4 phases of special teams. I think Deontay Foreman is going to be the starting running back on this team. I think he shows a lot of explosiveness. He's a one-cut guy. Very fast. He's physical. I didn't know that Deontay Foreman runs a 4.45. I don't know how many people knew that. And the guy at 6 foot, he did this at 6 foot, 234 pounds when he was in college. I'm sure he's a lot smaller than 234 pounds now, which probably led to some of the injuries early on in his career. But yeah, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I don't completely disagree with you. Everybody's hyped about Roschon, and rightfully so. It's cool to see, this guy that has this kind of leadership, all that stuff. I mean, he's kind of like Montgomery, and I think Bears fans are going to fall in love with him in the same way. He's going to play hard. He's got the right kind of attitude. They talk about how he's cleaning the film room after they leave and all that stuff. And I think he's going to be a talented back. But people are ready to write off Khalil Herbert. And Khalil Herbert, he has that zone running ability. He has that cutback vision. He has that burst. There was a stat this guy, Scott Barrett, put out that said Khalil Herbert and Tony Pollard ranked first and second best in rushing yards over expectation per carry. And that doesn't surprise me when you talk about
Rags, say that one more time.
Well, I'm not a stat nerd. All I know is this has Khalil Herbert at number 1. And the stat says average rush yards over expectation, minimum of 125 carries. Khalil Herbert is 1. Tony Pollard is 2. Travis Etienne is 3 from the Jaguars. I always butcher his name. Nick Chubb, 4. Very good running backs. Khalil Herbert at the top. And he actually it's by a wide margin, even ahead of Tony Pollard. I don't really even need the stat to make the case. I think Khalil Herbert, people are going to be ready to write him off, move on to the next flavor of the month. They're all 3 solid backs. So it'll be interesting to see how the running back carry disparity goes. I do agree that I think Roschon Johnson will be a good red zone guy because, hard yards, right? He runs hard, but then on third down, you're going to have a guy that you can rely on that's going to be a physical blocker. And that gives Justin Fields the ability to audible at the line of scrimmage. If they're going to call a run play and they want to audible out and go into a pass, Roschon Johnson can do both. So I think in third down, red zone, short yardage, that's going to be his role. And then you'll see Foreman and Khalil Herbert kind of alternate with the other part of that role with the running back. It's a good problem to have. And I think what we do as fans, and we did this with Herbert and Montgomery to a certain extent, is we got to pick a side and then kind of denigrate the other side of it. And we even got pigeonholed with this with Hogue and me going back and forth between Montgomery and Herbert. I never thought Montgomery wasn't a good back. I just thought I felt fans were overhyping just how great his impact truly was. And I think Roschon Johnson will be able to come right in and fill that exact same role that David Montgomery had. That's not to slight David Montgomery. It's just that's who he is. That's who Roschon will be. Lead explosion at the running back position. And I think Khalil Herbert has that. So, I still think he's going to be a guy that they're going to rely on heavily this year.
I think that's the third thing, though. You have to define what a running back, what is RB1? What's the definition of that? And you see that across the league. Like you just brought up a perfect example of Montgomery and Herbert. Montgomery was, by all definitions, RB1, even though Herbert had that explosion. You look at the Dallas, by all stretch, Zeke was the guy still, the RB1, and they sprinkled Pollard in until Zeke started really getting some of those injuries. Teams want their RB1, the guy that's in there more often than not, getting those snaps to be multiple, you do all those things, and you have your change of pace back. We use the Lions, right? They signed Montgomery and they went out and got a very good running back in Gibbs, but I don't think anyone's going to call Gibbs necessarily the RB1. They're going to call Montgomery the RB1 because he's going to be getting, I think, the bulk of the carries between the 20s for the most part, and then you have Gibbs as that change of pace, split him out in the slot, all of those things. So again, no one's arguing. I love Khalil Herbert. He is my dude. But at the end of the day, just what is your quote unquote RB1 definition?
Right, because I think they're 2 separate conversations, right? It's who's RB1 or who's the best back on the team,
right?
Because David Montgomery had 200 carries, and Khalil Herbert's last year was significantly less, but their yards were almost identical, and so that's kind of, yes, Montgomery was RB1, but Khalil Herbert, in my opinion, was the better running back. So that I think is where we're going through the weeds as far as this discussion. So I agree with you there.
I agree that he was one of the best running back on our team, but we're forgetting about another running back that Brian Poles brought to the team this year. And I would go on the limb to say that Khalil Herbert is fighting for his position on this team next year. Ryan Poles was extremely complimentary of Travis Homer, and we know that Travis Homer has been one of the best pass protectors in the league for the past couple of years. Is what, if we look at the Pro Football Focus ratings and all of that stuff, he has the ability to catch out of the backfield. And Brian Poles specifically says that he thinks he's underutilized as a runner. He thinks that he has some ability there that hasn't been tapped into, and from his memory of scouting him when he was in Kansas City. So you look at this, you have Donta Foreman, Travis Homer, and our rookie, and Roshan Johnson, all Ryan Poles guys. He handpicked all three of those guys. So who's the guy who's going to be fighting for the roster spot? I like Khalil Herbert. I think he's a great runner. He was our best running back last year, but he doesn't offer anything in pass protection. He doesn't offer anything catching out of the backfield.
That was my problem with him, Sam. He cannot pass block, and he's a great runner.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that you guys brought up about the yards per carry, and I think that was the difference between him and Montgomery. Montgomery could pass block. It's hard to be RB1 if you can't pass block. So don't know.
Well,
it's a great point with Travis Homer, though. Like, are they going to carry 4 running backs?
Yeah.
With that said, Herbert is also 25 years old. He'll be a unrestricted free agent at the end of 2025. So next year he's 26 years old. He's limited as far as the versatility and flexibility, like you all pointing out, with the blocking and not being able to do it. So I could see him fighting for a spot. I didn't see much. We didn't see much from Ebner. We're gonna chalk that up to being a 6th-round rookie, and maybe this year he'll be better and be able to hit the hole and actually accelerate. But Herbert, I just don't see him. Maybe he sticks around this season, but after that, maybe trade bait. For that last year of his contract.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple ways of thinking about this, and I'm learning to shut my behind up because I'm the host now, and I gotta let people talk. But I gotta say this: I see a couple things going on in this scenario. I think there's a Dante Foreman is to me the most underrated. You put somebody like Austin Eckler in the category of underrated running backs in the league. I think he's right there next to him. As probably those two are probably the most underrated backs in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think this guy has a lot more meat on the bone than people think. I think he's going to run away with this. I think he's going to run away with it. Not only that, I think he's going to get an extension sometime during the year because he's a dog. He's a dog, man. All you got to do is just watch the tape. There was times when he was in Tennessee, man, he was the better running back than the big boy. You know what I mean? He just was. And I think he's got that kind of chip on his shoulder. Listening to his interviews, I look at his takes on Twitter, and that dude is like pissed off that he signed a contract for that amount of money, and he's looking to prove that like dude, you need to be talking about me. And he's got that kind of attitude. So, I respect everybody's opinion, but I think that cat's gonna run away with it big time.
I agree. I think he's motivated. He's, he had some injuries early on in his career, but last year he really came on, and I could see him getting a contract extension this year as well.
Ebner is also a guy that I wouldn't look at last year's film and really judge him. He's a rookie, and you have to give there are some guys that rookie mistakes and rookie ways of thinking. I mean, the speed of the game, how fast the holes close up. You have to weigh that in as part of the ratio. I mean, it's just not. I just saw a bunch of rookie mistakes when I watched him play, and I wouldn't rule him out. I wouldn't just poo-poo him going into this camp. I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he's ready to do it. So I think he's going to adjust his body type. He's going to get a little bit slimmer, and the dude is actually a receiver that just became a running back when he was in college. So just watch out, man. Don't that dude's gonna probably surprise some people. So
I hope so.
all right.
Yeah, I think he could be a practice squad candidate for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Hey Braggs, we gotta have to wrestle for that, man. That was just a kick in the nuts, man.
Well, no, I mean that's what I said when we started this. It just speaks to the depth. Bringing up Travis Homer. Triple R's bringing up Travis Homer, and it's a numbers game at the end of the day. Yeah, he was a rookie last year. He's gonna get better in this league potentially, but on this team, I think he's got to hope for a practice squad spot, and if not, somebody else maybe goes and plucks him from us. But if he's on our practice squad, that's a solid start to our practice squad. So,
they're gonna keep 4 backs. They're gonna keep 4 backs.
Okay,
but Blasting Game is one of those 4. That's the other thing we have to remember. We have a fullback.
They can always make him a receiver or a tight end on the roster. They can always do that.
Oh no.
Am I right? They can always change just to fill out a roster. They can do that. But I wouldn't.
What you think of a guy like Cole Kmet, Robert Tonyan. Do you need a Jake Tongs on there, or can you roll with Blasting Game just to be that tight end hybrid, whatever you want to do, because that opens up another spot.
That's exactly right, Mason.
Good
you
point.
can do things roster wise to move guys around, shuffle guys around, but it's just going to be interesting. That particular position is going to be very interesting. That guy Robert Burns is something else too, but that's a whole. Let's pull up the defensive depth chart. I think there's a lot more arguments here than there is on offense.
Well, while that's being pulled up, I'm thinking Crookshank would be a nice replacement for Pettis, because we know what Pettis is, and he ain't all that. And Crookshank can do his returning jobs, and as far as what Pettis gave us as a receiver, I wouldn't doubt he can give us more than that even as a rookie.
Oh, man, I think Pettis gets a lot of. He dropped some balls, probably about 3 of them that really sticks out in my mind, man. But I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. Why? Because we had a really bad receiving core last year, really bad, and he ended up being one of the standouts in that core. Even when Mooney went down, he got extra attention placed on him, and he was still able to shake free and get loose in routes. And so, you know what, Pettis is one of those guys. I think people sleep on a little bit too much. I wouldn't be surprised he makes this roster and contributes to this team in a significant way, man. So I doubt what you're saying, Triple R. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I think that the guy's better than advertised. I'll just say that. Why'd everybody get quiet? All right, let's talk about
before you go to that, man. And do you guys think we can have a wide receiver make the team just based on return skills? Because Joe Reed's a guy that we kind of overlook. He was the nation's top return specialist at Virginia, and a player that I liked coming out, and they got him last year. We never heard from him, but our return game, I think that's where Ebner and some of these other guys have a chance is being a returner. And Joe Reed was pretty good in college. You think he's got a chance just as a returner to make the team?
I don't. No.
I think those spots are too valuable. Like you would at that point, you're going with a Pettis, or you're saying, Bayless, we need you to actually do what you were drafted to do, which is to be a special team person. It's hard to have a spot for a special team guy.
But if he's a special player and he has he could play all 4 phases, maybe. I mean, but it's a stretch.
He could get cozy with Ebner on the practice squad.
Yep.
I'll tell you, a guy not to sleep on in the special teams in the return game, and I do think this is his absolute only chance to make the team, because he offers very little as a receiver. Is Aaron Crookshank. If anybody's watched his film, he's a pretty good damn returner, and I think that's the value he brings to the team. And also, he's a guy that played some Wildcat, and they got 2 guys on the team that played some Wildcat in college. Man, this dude was really good at that when he was at Wisconsin. He transferred from Wisconsin to Rutgers, but he ended up being very good at that wildcat. And you always want to be dynamic as an offense, and have multiple guys that you can throw in on any given down and give you production. And so watch out for Aaron Cruikshank. He's probably going to be the guy that makes the difference between whether or not Pettis makes the team or not. So if that guy shows out in camp, Pettis is he's vulnerable. But if he doesn't, I think Pettis is going to win that last spot at receiver.
So how many receivers are you saying you're keeping?
What did they
Because
keep?
you have
last
DJ Moore at 1, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney,
I
Tyler
think
Scott.
7.
You're keeping Equanimeous St. Brown. You're keeping 7?
I'm
They
thinking
kept
6.
7 last year.
I'm thinking 6.
I was
7? They
thinking
kept 7 last year?
I believe so. Am I right?
I have to go back and look.
I believe they
I think
kept 7.
the top 3 are set. EQ is staying because it was blocking. Tyler Scott's staying because he's Tyler Scott and rookie, all that jazz. So now you already have 5. Like now you're deciding for that 6th spot at least between a Velus and a Dante Pettis. Velus is probably gonna get the nod there. I mean,
I
think it would come down to, if they kept 6, it'll come down to Pettis and Equanimeous St. Brown, because people are like, oh, well, they just re-signed St. Brown. Well, they didn't even give him that much money.
who's a
And
better
Pettis, you know, you can say what you want about receiver, but he came in on punt return duties and took over for Velus because Velus couldn't handle that. Velus is very good at kick returning, but can Velus become a good punt returner? We hope he can, because he's explosive. But if they can't trust him to catch the ball, they need a guy in Dante Pettis to do that. And then St. Brown may end up being the odd man out. You know, when they signed him,
so important.
Yeah.
What's that?
St. Brown's blocking. So
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. Well,
think
that's
he's
why
better,
I'm
though.
keeping 7. But I'm just saying, if it comes down to 6, you know, he could be the odd man out. I highly doubt Velus Jones is going to be the odd man out.
right.
No, not
How
after
much
1
time-
year.
No. How much time do we really think that St. Brown's going to be on the field, though? Because if we're just going to say we're going to keep a guy for his run block, and then we're going to tip our hand every time, put him out there just to run block.
Well,
That's why I think he's on. What's that?
Keep in mind, he's still 6'4" and runs a 4.40. So I don't think his hands are that stony.
It didn't do much for us last year, though.
Last year, I
Hands,
agree,
drop
but
it like a rock.
But Equanimeous as your wide receiver 4 is so different than him as your wide receiver 2. It's that's such a different conversation.
Say that one more time. Say that one more time, Mason, because
Equanimeous St. Brown as your wide receiver 4 is so different than him as your wide receiver 2.
let me help out with a little bit of context there. When we talking about the roster of last year, and that's yesteryear. He happened to be probably, outside of Mooney, the best receiver that we had on paper, the guy that you would give the most attention to, but it ended up being Mooney, and it ended up being Dante Pettis as the most explosive guys. However, he's probably a 1 or 2 receiver, maybe 3. Maybe. I think it's 1 or 2. But you put him at the number 4 or the number 5 receiver, and he's not getting attention, man, that's a big target sitting out there. Really big target sitting out there without a whole lot of attention. You know, there was times that last year when there was double teams on Equanimeous St. Brown. You know what I mean? So I think that's the context I think Mason is looking for. It's different when he's in the position that he is now with all these different weapons around him. You don't want to look at him in the same context as you did last year. It's going to be a different look for him. It's going to be a different look for all those guys. So I do agree with Mason there.
Well, I think everybody getting pushed down because of DJ Moore makes everybody better. So, you know, I don't think, as far as EQ, like, I doubt he's going to be there on passing downs, but he could be. But I mean, he'll be out there first and maybe second down. So, you know, depending. So he can still catch the ball. Although, you know, I'm not happy with his drop 4th down play last year. But I digress. You know, he's still 6'4", 6'5", runs a 4.4. I mean, he still can catch the ball. I'm just picking on the one time he didn't. But his blocking is huge, man. And you understand, you know how huge they are on wide receivers that can block, which is, paramount to them. So he's going to be all right. And, you know, I just think this wide receiver room is going to be, with the addition of Moore, to just up the ante. I mean, the competition that I keep mentioning, man, there's a lot of dudes for not a lot of spots. So I think that you guys, step your game up, homie, and everyone's gonna have to step their game up, which is for us as fans, for the organization, it's great. So I don't think EQ's gone by any stretch. I think he'll be there.
Hey, Triple R, before we get into the defense, what you thinking about that subject we just talking about there?
I would not rely on Equinemius. I know he's here because he's Getsy's boy. He knows the system and he can block. But seeing him, drop the ball when it hit him in the hands on fourth down, it's like, all right, son, you're done. Can we get Pitts, the rookie 6'3" or 6'1", however tall he is, damn near 4.3 speed. He can block. EQ, Pettis, they've reached their upside. I mean, they are who they are. They're not going to get any better. And considering how much we sucked last year, to say that they were good is true, but this is a new era. This is a new year. And what sucked, if they were good during a sucky season, this year the bar is raised and their suckiness can go away in favor of somebody who can develop with a higher ceiling.
You know what? Before we get into the defense, on the point he just made about Pitts, Therick Pitts is a weird name. I just want to get into my notebook on this. He's got very good body control. He's about 6'2", 6'3", probably 6'2"-ish. Very, very good hands, great body control. He kind of gives off Allen Robinson vibes because he's not fast at all. But he's constantly getting open, and he's got really strong hands and a good catch radius. He's the definition of what you would call a possession receiver. So one of those guys between Fountain and maybe Nasimba Webster, he's going to give somebody a push for at least a practice squad spot. And so I just wanted to highlight him because I enjoyed watching his tape. It's not flashy at all. He's one of those guys that's going to hang around and impress some coaches to the point where he can make a practice squad and then scoot his way onto a roster if somebody gets hurt. So just watch out for that guy and watch out for that name. All right, let's move on to this defense. Man, Shawn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I can go down this list and pick out some stuff, but tell me something that sticks out to you here.
Not in the first unit. Everything. Walker, you signed him, so he'll get the start. May not get the most reps, but he'll get the starts. Billings, Justin Jones. I think depending on how Justin Jones plays, Javon Dexter could get equal reps or maybe even supplant him as a starter. But other than that, Travis, I'm not a big fan of Travis Gibson. I don't know. I think last year he was supposed to take a step forward. I don't think he did. But then again, that's a new system. All right. I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of his, and hopefully Dominique Robinson steps up. Sanborn at the Sam, yeah, but he's never going to be in there. They're always a nickel. So
tell me what you think about the. This is what sticks out to me, Shawn.
What
is the nose tackle position and the 3-tech position? You got Billings at the nose tackle. You got Jones at the 3-tech, and behind Billings is Zach Pickens, who everybody just assumes is going to be the 3-tech, and then you have Dexter behind Jones, who is actually the 3-tech. So, what do you think about that right there?
Well, that's what I had thought earlier. I thought Pickens was going to be the 1 and Dexter the 3. So that's why that didn't stand out to me. I like Travis Bell. I think he's going to be a nice rotational guy. I think we're going to get to see how, because he had great takeoff, but that was great takeoff against lower competition. But he's got a motor. So we'll see. But yeah, those two things didn't stand out to me because one, I knew they were going to be second team just to start. But two, what I had read and been hearing that Pickens, Zach with 2 C's is going to be the 1 and Dexter the 3.
before anybody else says anything, I just pointed that out because my man Barrelissimo, shout out to Barrelissimo. I love his videos, man, and I love what he does. He's really good at evaluating, but he loves to fuss with me sometimes. And he wants to argue about whether or not Javon Dexter is a 3-tech or a 1-tech, and he wants to go back and forth with me. And I kept telling him, I think he's capable of both.
Yeah.
And I think both those guys, Pickens and Dexter, are position versatile. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so to me, going back and forth with him about that was just like, okay, you can point out things about Javon Dexter if you want on tape when he's in Florida, when he's playing in a 2-gap system. And we went over that last week with Lester, but it's you evaluate and you're pointing out flaws about something that he's asked to do in a certain system.
Right.
He's gonna be challenged to do something completely different here. And so his upside at 3-tech and being explosive off the line of scrimmage, I think is going to be a joy to watch because he's huge. He's huge. He's powerful. He doesn't have. There's nothing about Javon Dexter that I didn't like. But let me shut up talking, man, because I can go on and on about that. Mason, what do you think about that right there?
In terms of the nose tackle and defensive tackle spots?
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of talk for no reason, to be honest. Who cares if Andrew Billings and Justin Jones are listed as starters? They're going to rotate so much. Yeah. One of the things that they talked about for Gervin and Pickens, for that matter, is they played too many snaps in college, and you can't do that when you're slamming up against centers and guards and all that. You need explosive power for each play, so you're going to rotate a ton. So whoever's starting doesn't really matter. Poles himself even said that he sees them both as being very flexible, allows them to be multiple. One play that Pickens will play the 1, another play will play the 3. Same thing for Dexter. It's just right now for us as, fans, analysts, fanalists, however you want to put it, we need something to talk about. So we're going to talk about this. And to me, it doesn't really matter. They have a lot of upside, and I'm excited to see where they go. And the other thing too is with Dexter specifically, people are worried, as you talked about his get off, his first step. And I can just tell you, I have multiple athletes that I work with on that exact thing. It's all muscle memory. If you look at his athletic traits, what he did in the 40, what he does in the vertical, everything says he is explosive. Everything says he is fast. When you're asked for a full year to stop, punch, read, react, then go, yeah, you're not going to all of a sudden have an amazing 10-second split when you look at your 40 time. You're just going to show up and looking bad on your tape. When you look at him the year before, he got off the ball quick. All he needs is reps, being just penetrate, push the pocket. He'll be fine. It's just something that right now, sitting here in May, we need things to talk about. So you're going to pick and, nitpick at these things.
Yeah, his broad jump was pretty impressive as well. So everything that signifies explosion for him was really, really good at the combine. So that's why they really, really, really feel high on this guy. And I do too. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think when people, it's kind of very similar to me. I have a lot of explosion, good broad jump. So we have a lot in common. When Shawn brought up Travis Gibson, I'm excited to see what he can do this year. You talk about competition. I do expect another defensive end to be brought in. So now you got DeMarcus Walker, my guy Luis Medina. He said something interesting to me because, how many times have I watched DeMarcus Walker play? Not much. I can pull up the tape all I want, but until I see him at camp, that's when I'm going to make my assessment on him. But what Luis said was he has Alex Brown vibes to him. And so I'm not saying he's going to be Alex Brown, but my boy Luis said, hey, he's got these kind of vibes. And I was like, okay, now you've got my ears perked up. And so when you talk about potentially bringing in another defensive end, which I do think they will, now Travis Gibson has competition. And, Corey Wooten, has talked about many times on our show about kind of his come to Jesus moment where Rod Marinelli came into the, film room before one season. He hadn't lived up to expectations of what they drafted him for. And they were like, we need to see something out of you this year or you're gone. And that was what lit the fire under Corey's ass to start playing better and producing. And, we're not making excuses, but at the end of the day, the defensive line was in shambles last year. They had no depth. They had no impact players. And then to expect Travis Gibson to improve off of his rookie year, it just didn't happen. So I understand why people are down on him, but I still want to give him a shot to compete and try to improve off of last year's disappointing performance. They 10 sacks from the defensive line from the Bears last year total. They had 19 as a team. Jaquan Brisker led the team in sacks, doesn't even play on the defensive line.
Right.
10 sacks total from the defensive line. All-time franchise low in Chicago Bears history. The
Right.
Eagles, for comparison, had 4 guys on their defensive line that had 10 sacks or more apiece.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 10 sacks as a total unit from this defensive line. So there's a bit of a trickle-down effect when it came to the production from this defensive line. Nobody was getting home. So now you bring in some rotational depth, some rookies with some fire under their belly, and maybe you bring in a free agent or somebody that comes on the waiver wire as a defensive end. Now all of a sudden maybe Travis Gibson lights a fire under his ass to get going. Let's see how Dominique Robinson continues to develop. But I'm still willing to give Travis Gibson a shot this year to see if he can make up for last year's disappointment.
Right.
Yeah, but when you're on the edge, bro.
Just 1 second, really quick. One point of order. Braggs, I need a favor because I do really want to talk to Woot on this subject because I know he knows exactly what he's talking about on this subject. I know that. I need you to help me get him. I want him on here because I do want to talk to him about that.
Absolutely. I'll throw him a shout out for sure. He's a good dude. He's pretty good about that kind of stuff. So I'll throw him a shout and send him your way.
Appreciate that. But I'm going to defend you a little bit on this because if you watch Travis Gibson's tape, he had no. One thing about Travis Gibson, if you listen to Flus and the GM talk about what those guys provide, he did really crush the pocket. He just didn't finish the play. He didn't finish. He really bent that corner and he put pressure and he got the pushback. And now with that included pressure that he's going to get from the inside is going to definitely help him. And whoever's on the edge, DeMarcus Walker or whoever it is going to definitely help them make more plays. And so for that reason that Bryce just said, and he's trying to defend Travis Gibson, I do want to help him on that end because I want to see what happens in camp with that added pressure from the inside and his ability to crush that pocket from the edge. And so I just want to see that happen before anything happens to Travis Gibson.
Well, the fact that nobody on the defensive line last year performed, like the defensive line as a unit was just underperformed. 10 sacks as a unit, all-time low for our team, just tells me that there's an issue with coaching as well. So, and we saw that Travis Gibson had a pretty good year the year before last. We had 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. So everyone was expecting a big year out of him, but when you see the regression in his play, where he goes from 7 to 3, and I'm looking up the numbers right now. I see he had 11 quarterback hits for the whole season, but he played every game last year. So that's just an underwhelming year for that unit as a whole. And I think that coaching might be the issue there. We'll see this year. This is a contract year for him, so I do expect big things from him. Because if he doesn't show up, then he's going to be out.
My thought is this.
Go ahead, Shawn.
My thought is this, man. It's like when you're rushing when you're on the edge, all right, which is what he was most of the time on a tackle. At one point, I know it's a 4-3 and a 3-4. When you're coming off a corner, you're coming off a corner. You're not worried about the 3 tech, the 1 tech, and he needs help there, all right, to have the pocket collapse in the middle. Because if you can just step up and replace where he came from, then obviously he's been rendered irrelevant. But I'm not big on his performance last year. I just think he could have done. I was waiting for him to have a good year, equally as productive or even more productive, even though he was changing systems. Still, I don't know.
It's fair to say he had a bad year last year.
Yeah.
He would say that himself, but I want to see it. I mean, it's contract year, so this is last chance for romance for him, and
Shawn,
I'm rooting for him. I'm biased in it because I do like Travis as a person. I've interacted with him a few times. He's a good guy. He did have a good year a couple years ago. So now that they've got some rotational depth, bring in another defensive end, and let's let that trickle down effect be in a positive manner as opposed to a negative one last year.
Shawn,
See, I'm a fan of Janet Jackson, and her song is "What Have You Done for Me Lately." Amongst others, making love in the rain, but we'll get to that later. But as far as Travis Gibson, he's 26 years old, going into a contract year. What are we doing? I mean, do we really expect him to get better? Now, it's not personal, but, give me a Terrell Lewis over Travis Gibson.
Man.
See what he get. Give me a DeAnthony Jones over Travis Gibson, because Travis he's who he is. And one point that I want to bring up, somebody said about Travis Bell, about his get off against lesser competition.
Yep.
The competition has absolutely nothing to do with the get off.
No, I agree. No, but
he is.
But it does have to do with the get off of the opposing team that he's messing with. That's what I'm saying. So
they get off faster as well, but he's off that ball like that. He's got long arms. He's short, and he's very, very strong.
Very stocky.
So he's gonna cause some issues in the interior of an offensive line when he's in there, and just the interior between Dexter, Pickens, Bell, and that rotation of tackles, you're going to have to double team some of those guys. So that's going to give the opportunity for who's ever on the ends to just, single coverage and eat. Travis Gibson, okay, whatever, but no.
He just mentioned Travis Bell. Hey, Mason, are you familiar with Grady Jarrett?
Yeah.
In Atlanta? Yeah, I thought that was a really good, solid comparison to Travis Bell. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it matches there, and it's one of those things where it's hard. I get excited about guys like that, but what is he, a 6 foot, nose tackle out of? It's funny, his combine tape running the 40. It looked like they were running it, in a local park. In terms of where he's from in college, we just have to, I think, temper expectations. I'm excited about the kid. He seems awesome. Poles loves him as a person, obviously, and his measurables are really, really good. The question ends up being, can he transfer against that level of competition? Yes, the get off doesn't matter, but man, there's a big difference between playing against the cats he was back in college versus what he's going to be doing in the NFL. So, the comparison, it fits. It's just going to be a big transition.
All right. You know what? Here's another point of interest I saw on this thing, and it was Jalen Johnson. Actually, it's Tariq Stevenson. And there's something I want to say about him that I don't think most people really know about him, is he started off as a slot corner at Georgia. He came into Miami as a slot corner. He ended up going out there to the boundary out of need from the team. And so everybody just assumes he's just this outside boundary corner. No, this guy has a quick twitch ability. He can play both. He can really play both. And here's what I think about Tariq Stevenson in relation to Jalen Johnson. What I think is going to happen, what I hope happens, is they sign Jalen Johnson because I think he's worth it. But I think Jalen Johnson is going to overbid himself. And I think he's going to end up getting signed by another team because they may not want to pay him, and they feel like they have qualified depth behind him to be able to compete. And so that it kind of worries me, but at the same time, I'm all right with it, and I'm not mad at Jalen Johnson because you get that
money.
Yeah, you may get one opportunity at that bag, man. You better grab it, because injuries happen, and if you can get it, you better get it right now.
Yeah, I don't think Jalen Johnson gets re-signed, honestly.
I see it going down the same path as Roquan, where he has a price. The Bears make an offer. They have a price, but Jalen wants more. And polls has shown with both Roquan and David Montgomery. I know the money was different, but it was kind of the same thing. They offered to both those guys, but at their number. And so if you as a player think you're worth more, Poles hasn't shown that he's going to come off of that number. I think the only way to push him off that number is if he has just an unbelievable production year in terms of creating turnovers, which is a necessity for Matt Eberflus. He brings that up repeatedly when they talk about Jalen Johnson. I think I think Jalen Johnson's a great corner, but I know what they prioritize at, with this hits philosophy and everything else. They want to create turnovers. So, again, not fair to evaluate these corners for not creating turnovers when you have a pass rush that's only getting 10 sacks. So it's this all works hand in hand. So this year is going to be a much better year to fairly evaluate these guys. I think my biggest question when it comes to, and you were going down this path, Nomad, is who's going to play the nickel? Because everybody's kind of sliding Kyler Gordon in there. And I do think that it's going to be the case. It's Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson on the outside, and Kyler Gordon on the nickel. But I was talking with my buddy Samir, who I really respect, and I enjoy just the conversation. He kind of opens my eyes to things that I don't think about. And he brought up the idea of, like, why not try to Jalen Johnson in the nickel sometimes? And you talked about with linebacker and just having versatility. I think all three of these guys can move around. I understand Jalen Johnson is an outside guy, but we're trying to get him turnovers. We're trying to get him production, put him in the best path of that. He's a big dude. I understand why you wouldn't, but I just think it's an interesting question to ask.
Jalen can't stay on the field, let alone get turnovers, which is, paramount to this, staff and this team, but he can't stay on the field.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I don't think that he can play the slot, because he just can't hold up physically. I think he came to us with the shoulder injury that just keeps happening. Maybe Mason can speak to that. I heard, though, that once you dislocate your shoulder, like, it keeps dislocating. After it pops out once, it's going to keep popping out.
Well, for Jalen, they did a particular procedure. But I think it's the Bankart, if I recall correctly. But basically, you take a piece of bone, you cut it off, and you put it right in front in that shoulder area to create almost like a doorstop, so that the shoulder doesn't dislocate anymore. Problem is, you're now creating a biomechanical change, right? Your body is designed to work in a certain way, but now all of a sudden you're changing the range of motion, you're changing the things that are there, basically, and that's going to create wear and tear on other joints. That's going to create differences in terms of length, tension, relationships with the muscles around it, and so, I mean, you're just messing with the whole biomechanic of that arm. Hence why he has had a hard time staying on the field. And not just that, the few times we've seen him in the slot, I mean, let's be real, this is Devontae Adams, but that one game against the Packers, I mean, he just looks kind of lost out there, to be honest. And it wasn't even a Devontae Adams issue. It was a technique issue. And we saw that with Kyler last year. They were asking Kyler to learn two different positions. They wanted him in the slot. They wanted him outside. He looked a lot better when they said, hey, just go in the slot. Just that's your spot. So with all that being said, it's just a long way of saying, I think keeping Jalen and Tyreek on the outside makes the most sense. Keeping Kyler in the slot makes the most sense. If you have a all-star matchup against a receiver that you need your best corner on, maybe you have him follow. But, sometimes people are trying to play 3D chess, and it's just like, just play chess.
Sure.
You know what?
Well, and that's where Terrell Smith comes in, the kid out of Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. That's where they're talking about the Jalen Johnson situation. If he doesn't come back, or if his number's too high, if whatever the situation is, so now you just slide Terrell Smith in that left corner, or one corner, Tariq Stevenson in the other corner, keep Kyler at the slot, and now you're cooking with gas, and all these three corners are literally in their first or second year, and you have a long time with those guys, and they're going to play together, get to know each other better, and play off each other so well. So, which is what I said earlier, is, man, the way that Ryan Poles has built this thing is a thing of beauty, because if you do lose Jalen Johnson, okay, that's going to suck. But now Terrell Smith's got a year underneath watching Jalen Johnson, getting some time as well, because he's going to get some time. And now he can step in next year. And I'm not saying he'll be as good as Jalen Johnson, but he's going to step in as a starter with with experience of watching Jalen Johnson, and then the experience of playing. So it's, again, hats off to Ryan Poles. He's doing a damn thing with the draft picks and the creating competition at every position.
While we're talking about the slot corner position, I just want to make sure this is something I've got to bring this up and I don't know if we're going to have enough time to finish this conversation, but if there was a position of that really impressed me, and things that like Josh Blackwell and Jalen Jones, out of all the entire team that really surprised me and I was really impressed with, I'd have to give it to those two guys. Those two guys are really, really effing impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every time there was times when they got caught up and they were in the wrong spot or didn't finish a play, but that's to be expected, you know. But I really love those two guys, and we're talking about who's going to play at slot. I think you can't sneeze at those guys. Also, we signed a guy, Michael Ojemudia. I don't know if you guys have studied this dude, but let me tell you something, man. I don't know, other than Denver having a turnover in their roster because they switched over in defensive style. There's no reason on God's green earth why that guy should have been on the waiver wire at all. This dude was a steal. I'm only telling you guys what I saw on tape, and what I'm telling you now, what I saw on tape is he's going to compete. Kendall Vildor's got his days are numbered if this dude comes into camp healthy.
Nomad, what's he, 6'3"?
Yeah, about 6'3".
About 6'3". Yeah, he's a big corner. I loved him at Iowa.
Yeah.
Well, all that being said, and just looking at the depth that we have at corner, even at the nickelback position, guys who have the versatility to play the nickel, and I think we're all in agreement that Jalen Johnson isn't worth the money, the next contract, because of his lack of production. Even when we did have a pass rush, we had Khalil Mack here. He has one career interception. Yep. So why not trade him to another team this year and get something for him? Because there are other teams that don't have as many the depth that we have at cornerback right now, and maybe could use a Jalen Johnson right now. If one of these guys steps up in camp, let's say Terrell Smith is killing it in camp, and we think that we can just, push him into the season as our left cornerback. Is anyone opposed to that? Just trading Jalen Johnson? Because I don't want to lose him for nothing. I know we're not going to re-sign him, but why not get a draft pick for him?
Indeed, flip him.
I'm not averse to it at all. Not at all.
What do we get for
I just
him?
think it'd be a funky season to have two rookies starting outside corners. That'd be a roller coaster ride.
What if it was
Ojemudia?
Or
right,
Jalen Jones, or
but also
Blackwell.
here's the thing. Here's what makes it really feasible. That D line starts getting pressure. Okay, because if we step up, remember we had 10 sacks.
I mean,
you start getting some pressure from the D line. Yeah, you might be able to push to Jalen Johnson because he might have a couple picks, and you're like, okay, well, Terrell Smith can do the same shit, or Michael Ojemudia can do the same thing. Now we can flip Jalen Johnson for capital. So if that D line gets a lot more pressure, because remember at the end of the year, our DBs were making a lot of PBU pass breakups, and that's with no pass rush, negative pass rush. All right, and they're making a lot of pass breakups, a lot of passes defended, and I was like, wow. So you up the ante, you up the pressure a little bit, even just a little bit, man. It's going to make that secondary so much more effective.
I'm glad.
We also have John Hoke back this year, who each time he's been on the Bears team, we've had players getting interceptions at corner, and our entire secondary has always played well. This is his third stint here with us, and I'm expecting the same, nothing less.
Let me tell you guys something real quick, Braggs. I know Braggs is always itching to get in here, but this is
Austin Reeves just hit a bank shot 3. I about took this computer and threw it against the freaking wall with a minute left in the game to cut it to 2. Banks a 3, and while LeBron's laying on the other end of the court, I about took this computer and smashed it against my wall. So you go ahead and talk.
Hey, no, that's funny. But really quickly, man, to Shawn's point about when this is, and I tell this story all the time. I did play in a 4-3. I do know what it's like to play in it. When you're in the zone concept, you're dependent, especially as a DB. You're dependent on the front four, or however you scheme up what's coming from the front. You're dependent on that group to be able to get pressure or get to the ball or the quarterback or whatever. What makes it great is when you're able to do it, when you're able to get pressure from your front. Now you're in a position where you're not chasing all damn day for 4 and 5, 6, 7 seconds. Now you're in a position where you can kind of look. You can take a look in the backfield and kind of see where everything is going. So if you're in a zone, if you're in cover 2 as a left side corner, you can kind of flip back and kind of feel your receiver as he's going down the field. And you can also take a look in at the quarterback and be ready to break on something that's coming your way. That wasn't really necessarily there a lot last year because you didn't have pressure from your front. And so it makes everything better around you. That improvement from your linebacker core, that makes everything around you better. Man, it's going to be so much different than what we got used to seeing last year. And they were really good at times. But just bank on this. They are going to be markedly improved. And when I say that, we're talking about whatever you saw last year, add 50, 60, 70% better from the moves that they made. This is going to be a much better defense based on the fact that we can get pressure from the middle, and hopefully we can get somebody signed in here and come in here and be a proven pass rusher that really, really turn this thing up another notch. So
that's why I laugh when I talk to some of my friends in these spaces. You've been in a Nomad. That like, oh, well, if they double their wins, I'll take that because they get 6. Guys, I just feel like, I know we're all afraid to have expectations. So we don't want to be let down, but they built a good roster.
They did.
Do they have holes? Yeah. How many teams in the NFL have a perfect roster? 3?
Nobody.
There's nobody essentially nobody has a perfect roster. The expectation of every hole to be filled is silly, especially in the year that from what they had as a depth chart at the very end of last season. I'll roll with this. I'm excited to see what they got. I understand why Shawn has an itch to think they're going to surprise this year. I think it's completely fair. I think you can make more of a logical argument why they can win 9 or 10 games than why they're going to win less than 6. Last year, it was the other way around. People trying to spin the spin zone however they can to figure out how they're going to win 9 or 10 games. It was illogical. The logical answer was they're probably not going to be a good team. I think it's reversed this year. And, injury is always going to be the defining factor for any team. But the depth is pretty solid. Guys that got young players that still got to prove themselves that maybe they all don't work out. That's not every draft pick works out. But last year we had to rely so heavily on that draft class to come in and play, whereas this year they're not the guys that are at the front lines of this team. So I think Poles has done a great job with this. I'm excited to see how they can come out the gates. Those first 8 games, I think the first 3 or 4, they have very winnable games, aside from the Kansas City one. And then they have a tough stretch that's going to be kind of their defining moment to see if they can truly surprise and be in the hunt in December. But I really, really think that the one thing you can say, because I always call it fan math. Well, they picked up this guy and that guy and this guy, and the roster's this much better, and they were close in 9 games, so that equals they're going to win 9 games. It doesn't transfer like that. But the one thing that does transfer is how hard this team played with a bottom-of-the-barrel roster. They are going to play hard with this new roster they're putting out there this year. One thing we haven't talked about at all tonight is the coaching staff, and I do think they have some things to live up to and prove themselves on, but they did get this team to play hard week to week, and I think that will translate again this year.
The culture is what you're talking about, Braggs, and that's the thing is that you had those guys, and it's just like, and now you're bringing in more talent because let's be honest, when we talked about the wins, well, you gutted that whole defense. I mean, you literally had practice squad players, retreads. You had nobody on that defensive line, hence the only 10 sacks from the D line. So you literally gutted that team, and it's still how many 9 games were still 1-score games. and it's not all Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a big part of it, but it's not all Justin Fields. And now that we've got more talented players on defense, some still have to cut their teeth. It's your rookies or second-year players, but they're going to do it. The defense is going to be much, much better, and that in turn is going to translate into shorter fields. Going to turn into more turnovers and shorter fields for Justin Fields, no pun intended, and for this wide receiver core and this running game. It all works hand in hand. Again, it's the way Ryan Poles has done it. It is a stroke of genius. So when people sit there and they may say I may be a homer just because I'm a Chicago Bear fan, but I'm not. I'm looking at it from a coach, from a talent evaluator standpoint, and from a coach's standpoint. The culture that they built, and now the talent that they brought in. The culture is what you set first. You can't bring in talent. Then he set the culture last year when they didn't have talent. Now the talent comes in. They know exactly what to expect. All right, from everybody else that's here. So now that added talent to this culture is going to, man, I'm telling you, right, it's going to be 9 and 10 wins. I said 10 wins minimum. I said 10 wins.
Hey, Shawn, you know what? Before I do one more final round around this, everybody in the stage, I want to say this, man, and I want to say this to everybody in the fan base, and I mean this with all sincerity. Don't fall victim to equivocating. Equivocating, what's been done in the past, another regime, and things that's happened to the Bears in the past. It's not fair to equivocate what's going on now based on things that happened with another regime. Just give these guys an opportunity to show you that they have the chops. And everything I've seen so far has proven to me that they have the chops, and they have great talent evaluators around in that building that are coalescing and coming together to make for a great this everything I've seen so far. I'm elated with. To a level that I get so fucking freaking excited, excuse my language, about it.
Quarter in the cuss jar.
I can't big jar. But listen, I'm absolutely excited about what we can do going forward. Forget what happened in the past. Forget all that stuff. This is a different regime. You can't base what's going to happen in the future based on regimes that happened in the past. You just don't do it. You fall in a trap if you try to do that. Just know that these guys, I think finally they have the right football people in the building to change everything. And I think it's going to start right now. So I will say,
don't forget, man, this is second scouting staff. All right. This is why I believe in Ryan Poles. This is his first year with his people, because last year he was with my guy, Mark Sadowski. All right. And that crew from the old regime, and they got four starters out of that. Now with his crew, now they had some more, they filled some more spots. So if you get 3 or 4 starters out of this crew, I mean, it just shows the genius and the talent evaluation skills of Ryan Poles, because he had 2 completely different staffs last year and this year. And now he's going to keep moving forward with this staff. And if they get 3 or 4 starters or key contributors, man, this team, they're going to continue to bring in depth and continue to make this team good. Let's not forget the fact that, and overlook that fact of 2 completely different scouting staffs from his first 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Hey, it's kind of refreshing to me that I have one word I can associate that I haven't been able to use in 20 years with GMs, and that's trust. I've really seem to trust Ryan Poles. Of course, Pace never gained my trust. Phil Emery, I don't even want to start cussing myself. And even before that, Jerry Angelo was, iffy. He did some good things, but for some reason I really do trust Ryan Poles. So that's refreshing in itself. So it's a season of optimism always in the summer, but it feels different this year.
Mason, I just want to, and we're gonna go around the horn. Mason, I'm gonna say this one more time, man. I don't believe you as a fan, and I can't tell anybody how to be a fan. You'd be a fan, the kind of fan that you want to be. I just want to put a little fat on your head. Do not believe, based on history, things that are going to happen in the future. It's not relatable to right now. I think we have the right people in the building. We have real football people in the building, and I think the combination of Flus and Ryan Poles and his staff, I think they're doing a bang up job. And I don't know about you, Mason, but I'm looking forward to a really good season this year.
No, absolutely. And not to bring the mood down on it, but think about some of the names that have walked through Hallis Hall that were brought in, right? Previously you got, Riley Ridley, Duke Shelley, Kareth White, Joel Iabaniwe, Bilal Nichols. How Adam Shaheen. It feels like y'all already said this. It feels different. Even some of those third, fourth, fifth round guys that were brought in, they're doing more already in that first year, even if it's just special teams or even if it's just practice squad potential, then, and the mentality with it, right? You went up to go get like a wide receiver that didn't really fit you when you went and got an Anthony Miller. You went up for a James Daniels, who honestly is a little soft. All those things. It's a different mentality. It's a different team. It's a different future. I'm excited.
Before you go, Braggs, let me make a correction. That is Dr. West, if you're nasty. Go ahead, Bragg.
Oh, like I said, I think I said my piece here a minute ago as far as my little rant. So I'll kind of leave my final word for that. But as I said before, for the people, you can call it hedging or trying not to get your hopes up. Set your expectations a little higher, just a little higher. You don't want to go all the way up to me and Shawn and think they can win 10 games. That's where I personally am looking at, is hovering around 9 or 10 games. I want them to have a kind of season the Lions had last year, and I think they're very capable of doing that. I think their schedule sets up with the bye weeks and things of that nature, and the way the roster looks. I like how it's taking shape. Need some things to go your way. But for the fans that are like, I'll take 6 wins, that's twice as many, that's double the amount of wins as last year. Set your expectations just a little higher. To me, this team should win a minimum of 7 games. I'll accept 7 games. I won't be happy with it. I'll accept it, depending on the context of how that season goes, because I want to see them compete every week. But anything below 7, to me, would be a big disappointment. So, I understand people don't want to get their hopes up and not be let down. But, hey, they had their year to rebuild last year. It's time to start playing some football this year.
Hold on, Bragg. So Cornelius Squalls wants to know who won that hoop game.
The Nuggets came back. The Lakers were winning that whole game by 10, and the Nuggets caught fire in the fourth quarter. They made it a little interesting in the final minute, but the Nuggets took control, and they now have a 2-0 lead in the series as it heads back to LA. So as a diehard LeBron hater, because I haven't been able to root for the Bulls in the playoffs in 8 years, all I live for is LeBron's failures. And I'm a big Steph guy. I mean, I'm a Jordan guy. Jordan's over my shoulder over here. I'm a Jordan disciple. The reason I love sports is because of Michael Jordan. So I'm always going to have this rivalry with LeBron. But I also have a great admiration for Steph Curry. So didn't love that he knocked my boy Steph out. So now I'm rooting for the Nuggets to take down LeBron so I can enjoy the finals in peace.
The newest member of our Nomad Live, our Nomad Network team and our Nomad Live crew, Triple R, man, wrap it up with your final thoughts.
Before I do that, I just wanted to point out that I read someplace today, I would have sworn, but I can't find it, that Josh Blackwell has a knee issue, and it's along related to he had knee issues during the season, which is why he was out. So, that's something going forward to look out for. And also, I'm going to put this out there. I know he's a fan favorite, but Bojack, coming off his Liz Frank, coming into his 30-year-old season, as much as he's making, and all the young talent that we brought in, I could see him being out. And to wrap up with Poles, speaking of the talent that he brought in, not only are they high mental football IQ people who want to be great themselves individually and as a team, but something that we've also never seen here is the athletic ability of the overall draft class in UDFAs. Granted, every year, guys are athletic, but not the the high RAS type athletics that Poles is going for. So he has the the combination going of the brains, the brawn. He's being smart with the cap money. He's not letting it burn a hole in his pocket. He's being smart with his picks and who he signs, and he's just being very, very methodical on how to build this team. And I'm expecting that waiver wire position to produce some nice results, because there are going to be people cut because of financial reasons from other teams that'll be like, what? They cut that guy? Oh man, we got him? Okay, cool. So don't sleep on that, because we got a while. So I'm looking forward to it all.
I damn sure agree with that. Samo, man, what you got?
Man, you guys have said it all, man. I'm just excited and optimistic about this year. I think we're in the right hands finally with Poles and even Eberflus as well. I think he doesn't get enough credit for, the way he made our team fight. Our team fought in every game. There's no way in hell we were supposed to be in that Eagles game early on. We fought with those guys early on in that game until the second half. And I think that there's a lot to be said about that. We lost 7 one-score games. I expect us to win those games this year. We've weaponized our offense. We have a lot of depth on our defense. I'm just excited for this year. Looking forward to, who else we can add to this team, like Tripp said. And let's do it, man. I'm optimistic. I see 9 wins or better.
Wow. Somebody, Toreen Whitfield, just said Murray just poured in 23 points in the fourth quarter.
That's some Mike numbers, boy.
Yeah. He was about it, wasn't he?
Where was Schroeder? Where was Schroeder?
Hey, my big predict. I don't want to say prediction. I'm just saying watch week 3. And you mentioned it earlier, Braggs. Watch week 3 in Kansas City. That's Kansas City. They might not be firing on all cylinders yet. They might have a hangover.
You think it's a needle mover?
I think I'll put it this way. I would not be surprised if the Bears upset the Kansas City Chiefs, because you haven't faced a guy like Justin Fields. All right. You faced people haven't this guy, obviously we saw what he could do with his feet. We know what he can do in the past, but that's in the collegiate game. I think it comes to he's got a lot of his receivers like for the second year. I'm telling you, I won't be surprised if they do upset Kansas City, and it'll wake up Kansas City, and Kansas City might go on a tear after that. But it's early in the season, and it's their best shot to get at Kansas City. So don't be surprised if that happens. If they do, make sure you remember. Damn, Shawn made that call.
I believe it, Shawn. Who's calling plays over there next year? Who's calling plays for Kansas City?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
And I'm hearing stories about out of Kansas City that are saying that that left tackle that they signed can't play left tackle, so they're about to have to push him back to the right side in Jawan Taylor. So, they may have some problems on their hands next year.
You don't want no problems.
Nope.
Hey, Chris, what you got? I see you in here, man. You got something?
Hey, man, I want to show you guys something before we get out of here as it pertains to our
questions, too. We got to answer a few questions.
Okay, as it pertains to our extra pick next year, our extra first-round pick. That is a 7th grader playing quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. That looks like the number 1 pick to me again next year, guys. Does that look like a kid playing at the Panthers rookie camp?
Hey, that guy's been 5'9". He's been 5'9" all his life, man. Ain't nothing gonna change. He can ball, man.
Yeah, he balled last year. We'll see. It looks like 7th grader.
Hey, he didn't get that short overnight, man. He's been that height.
Yeah, he might be shorter before the season's over. It looks like the number 1 pick to me, baby.
Well, I tell you what, I'll find out what hotel they're staying in on the road, every road game, and I'll pay somebody to pull the fire alarm at their hotel they're at. That's my plan. We all got to do our part. That's what I'm going to do.
Braggs, man, you got to help.
Braggs' cash app.
Braggs, you got to help us. We got to get a player on here, man. We got to get a guy on here, man. And I want that player to know. I want that player to know when you come here, you are not going to get badgered with BS questions. We're going to talk about X's. We're going to talk about O's. We're not going to sit here and harass you about what everybody's talking about in the media. It's going to be a Bears player friendly show. Guaranteed you're not going to get harassed. We're going to ask you about anything but all the crap that everybody wants to, crack them upside the head with. I want players to know that when you come here, you're in the safe place. This is a fan zone. We want to be fans of these players, and we don't want to harass them. And so if you would do that and help me that way, man, dude, I want these guys to know they can come here.
Yeah, man. You guys just keep up the good work. You just got rolling. I'm always there if you need any help or advice, and try to point you in the right direction of people I know. Always, I got no problem with that. Nomad, you showed a lot of support to what we're doing at CHGO. That means a lot to us. So I have no problem anytime you ever need me to hop on, I'm happy to, but I can always try to help in different ways as well. So I'll leave it at that and talk to you behind the scenes about some different things. But you guys are off to a good start. You got a good team, producers, good teammates. Enjoyed the intro. Thought that was cool. So you're on your way. Rome wasn't built in a day. If you keep at it, it'll just keep getting better and better. I've been doing this for a few years now, and once you own your own thing, you can learn a lot and grow pretty quickly. So rooting for you, man, and I'm rooting for all you guys, and I'll always be there to lend a helping hand when you need it. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, I'm going to touch base with you maybe tomorrow or something and kind of throw some things around just to get your wheels turning. But we can talk about that behind the scenes. But I'm going to take off, but I appreciate you guys having me on tonight. It was a good conversation with all you guys. Shawn, Mason, always good talking with you guys. Catch you around the corner here. Catch you on the mean streets of Twitter in the dark days of the off season. The conversation can get crazy.
Yeah, man.
My man Braggs, I
Likewise.
appreciate you, man.
Later, Braggs.
I love you to death, man.
Later.
Yeah. Later, guys.
All right.
Just to wrap. Let's get some questions in here, and I want to be. I hated to put Braggs on the spot like that, but I needed to do it, and we need to make sure this is a safe place for Bears players that we don't want to harass them. We want to just ask them real football questions and really get into what's life about for you, what's the preparation about, all those kind of things. But yeah, I meant that when I wanted this to be a safe place for the Bears. And I think this team feels like that. So, and we just started and we're growing. So I just had to put that out there. So let's get some questions up here. Anything. Is it true that the Bears offered the same as the Lions and Monty chose the Lions?
My understanding was it was just more guaranteed money was the issue. I think that was the issue. And if that was the case, then you can't fault them for choosing the Lions, because running back, in the NFL means not for long, especially for running backs. And you want that guaranteed money. And it could have been 500,000 more, or could have been $1 million more. Who knows what they were offering, but that's guaranteed. And he's not going to be in his game forever. He's going to have a wife or maybe some kids, and you need that guarantee. So I ain't mad at him, but that's what I had read, that it was literally just more guaranteed money from the Lions, because they were pretty similar. I think the numbers and the whole contract was pretty much the same except the guaranteed money.
What was the guaranteed dollars?
That I have to go back and check. I don't remember.
Somewhere around 8, 9, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I have to check. But like I said, I think that it was just more from Detroit, more upfront.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was there's about $1 to $2 million difference on the overall contract, and then just like was said, guarantees was the next level. I mean, he got the most of any free agent running back, so that got blown out of the water. Bulls wanted him back, but it was at their dollar, and we saw that. You look at the advanced metrics. Montgomery, while a good back by the advanced stuff, wasn't worth honestly what he got. When you see where you can get a guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs, when I'm pretty sure you can take a Roshan Johnson and get some similar production. That's just life as a running back.
Trip.
What up?
What do you think about that question? About that?
What are you gonna do? I mean, guys got to get their money, and if it's not here, at your favorite team's spot, you can't be mad at them. I'm a realist, whereas I understand that these are human beings. These are people, with, their own physical pains and families and issues. But, realistically, as a fan, it's not my problem. I want to see you on the field. I want to see you performing. I don't mind you getting your money, but if you are, a albatross on the team because your cap hit is so high, and that we can't fill a team, that's not a good thing to me, because you can have one good player on a 53-man roster, and where's that roster going to go? So, players, go get your money. I'm glad Poles didn't pay him, because I feel that we came up with Rojo instead. So, just keep it moving.
Nomad Schefter reported 3 years, 18 million, 11 guaranteed.
That's what did it.
18 million, 11 guaranteed.
11 guaranteed million.
Damn.
Poles had a number that was a little bit slightly less, and he didn't bat an eye when Monty came to him and said, "Hey, they're offering me this. Can you match it?" He said no, and that's what I respect more than anything. He has a plan, and he's not deviating from that plan. He had a number, it was set, and he was like, "Hey, no, you want to play with us or you don't want to play with us? There are other guys out there. We got Donta Foreman. Donta Foreman, I think, is a better running back than Monty right now. I think he has more speed and more elusiveness, and he has that same physicality in his game. So, I commend Poles for what he did, and just not budging. Even if it was $1 million, if it was $500,000, hey, this is what we're offering you. Then that's what the difference is between this regime and the prior regimes that we've seen. All the other, we overpaid for our players in the past. We're not going to overpay for guys this time.
Remember, he did that same thing with McGlinchey. I think we're like $500,000 over his number rumored. All right, and he stood fast. And the hell with you, the hell with me, the hell with everybody. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm doing it my way, just like Frank said. I did it my way, and you got to respect the man, whether you like him or don't like him, love him or hate him. You got to respect the man who's strong in his convictions and sticks with them, man. And again, that's nothing we're used to here in Chicago. That's not something we are used to, and that takes a while for us to get used to as well.
Mm-hmm. And before we get to Cornelius's question, I want to say this on my end of that whole David Montgomery thing. Is I think they were going to move on regardless. I know there's a bunch of stories came out that the Bears were willing to, match offers, and they offered something that was qualifying. I'm pretty sure they offered something, but I'm almost certain they were ready to move on because they were looking for more pop from the running back position that he couldn't provide. I think they were prepared for a while. I think somewhere around mid-season, I think they saw the top of David Montgomery, and I think he topped off as a running back. And I'm not trying to kick him in the sack on the way out of the door, but I do believe that if you are looking for pop and explosion from the running back position, that you had to come to the understanding that David Montgomery isn't that guy, and you need to go and get you some guys that help you in that area. And so my opinion on that is they made exactly the right move by moving on from David Montgomery and bringing some other guys in here. And let me really quickly say, hey, we're not going to be able to get to every one of you guys' questions. Get in the comment section. We do really respect what you guys have to say, and we want to respond to it. We'll use what you say in those comments. So go into the comment section and make sure you get your voice heard there. And so let's get to the next question. Will the improvement in the linebacker core make the nickel corner jobs easier? Shawn,
you got athletic linebackers, right? So you got people dragging, you got people coming across the middle, depending on what you want to do with the slots. Or anytime you improve the quality of one level, it's going to affect the quality of the other. There's 3 levels, and when you do that, when you upgrade the linebacker position like they did, it's going to help the secondary. It's going to help because you have the athleticism. We talked about that a few times today. The athleticism of these guys. All right, you have a guy who can run, who can cover, who can drop deep. So if you're in a Tampa 2 and you're dropping deep, that deep middle, all of a sudden isn't as open as it could be because of the athleticism of the linebacker. So that the second level, them upgrading it is really going to help that secondary, and even upgrading the first level. Okay, it's not, again, I'm not making them a steel curtain by any stretch, but the bar was set pretty low. What if you get 16, 18 sacks from the defensive line, which still is a low number, but it's still a hell of a lot more than we had last year. Man, just think of what that's going to do. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, it'll make the nickel's job easier, but also the other cornerbacks as well.
Before I go to you, Triple R, let me chime in on that comment right there. I'm at the line of scrimmage. If I'm a nickel corner, I'm at the line of scrimmage, and I'm looking at a bunch formation over on the right-hand side. So it's bunch left to me. It's a bunch left to me. And I need to communicate to probably the will linebacker right behind me and say, hey, and the will linebacker needs to make me understand that, hey, I got you if they do some kind of pick and switch.
Right. I got inside.
Right. So if there's a pick route, for a fact there's going to be a drag route that goes across the field just to get somebody out of the play. There's going to be a route that goes behind at least the middle linebacker. There's going to be a drag route that goes behind him. So they're going to try to pull as many players as they can out of that play just to get off maybe a quick route on the right-hand side, maybe a screen, maybe who knows, a bubble screen, anything like that. But you need assurance from your linebacker behind you. When you got a 6'5" guy, that that is behind you in the middle. So no matter what that drag route does or whatever route they do to cross the field, when you have a 6'5" guy that can cover underneath and over top if they run somebody behind him, and he's smart enough to know exactly what he's looking at, man, hell yeah, that makes your defense a whole lot more vaunted. So yeah, that linebacker group right there, and you got a will linebacker that's a little bit smaller, but he is capable. And that they did the exact right thing by signing those two guys. That's going to make this defense way more potent, and they're smart. They're not just guys that are big and have measurables. They're really smart. And when you're a cornerback, that makes everything better because you're not worried about what's going on behind you. Those guys, they got you. So that's that. So what you got?
Hey, Nomad, before you do that, Dr. West had to leave. He's got patients starting bright and early in the morning, but he does appreciate the invite. So we want to reciprocate that and definitely appreciate him being here. He did have to leave, though.
If you can let Dr. West know right now that this door swings wide open for him at any time he wants, just ask for an invite and he is welcome.
All right.
What you got, Triple R?
We definitely increased our defensive possibilities by upgrading the linebackers, because now you get, young veterans in the middle of the field, so they're going to help the D line if they need to rush or, help with run support. And they're going to help the secondary because, the nickel corner doesn't have to cover as much of the field because you got these long arms and bodies who are fast looking at the quarterback with the
behind
support.
Them.
Exactly. So it's not like, last year or previous years where the nickel corner was just kind of out there and the linebackers were like, which way did he go? Now we got linebackers that are like, yeah, we want this. And so the every boat is rising because of the tides of the linebacker class.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
I absolutely agree with that. They got length, athleticism, speed, experience, and they've been extremely productive on the teams that they've come from. And they're good communicators. They recognize things. They're going to recognize things a lot faster. They're going to communicate to the DBs. I think it's absolutely going to make everyone around them better, even the defensive line. linemen. You know, they tap a guy on the ass and say, you know, kick in. I see it. You know what? I've been watching film. They're running right at you. Kick in a little bit. You know, everyone's going to be a lot better on this defense because of those linebackers. And like Triple R said, those are going to be the boats that are going to rise from those tides.
Shawn, it's like what you hear posts talking about multipliers and things like that. What they're saying is the guy has a multiple effect on the game, different players, like a 6'5" linebacker who is also fast, long and strong. He's a multiplier because everything that he does affects everything in front of him, everything behind him. Why? It's because if you're there, in every defense, there's a soft part, and it's usually in the middle. When you have a guy like that is long, fast, rangy, and get sideline to sideline like a blip, that is a multiplier. That increases your opportunity to close on a ball, or close on the quarterback, or close on the pass rush. That helps a defensive back behind him. That helps a defensive back in front of him. That's what you call a multiplier. So they definitely spent the right kind of money in the right area. If you don't have that guy and those two guys under leading your linebacker core, you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
The thing that also does is that it makes the window that a quarterback has to throw a lot smaller, a lot smaller. All right. I mean, if you don't believe me, the last guy who played that position in Chicago is in the Hall of Fame. All right. He was 6'4", 6'5", and, you know, he was able to run down the middle of the field. So if he's able to run, now you got to get it up over him, and then that helps the safety. Like, okay, well, the ball's he's going to have to literally drop it in the bucket. If you drop it in the bucket, it's going to take time to get there. You can't drop it in the bucket with speed, with some zip. It's got to come from a certain angle. If it comes from a certain angle, well, guess what? I got a free safety. We have a free safety back there in Bojack, who's ready, who's waiting for that, drop in the bucket so he can go pick it up. So it helps a hell of a lot to have that dude, because the window for completion is so much tighter. They're tight to begin with in the NFL, a hell of a lot tighter than in college, but it just got smaller and tighter. All right, with a 6'5", very long, speedy linebacker who can run down the middle.
Chris, what you got? I see you in there. Okay, Chris don't got nothing. All right, let's get.
I'm producing, man. I'm back here producing.
Okay. Let's get to the next question. Any? No more questions? All right. Let's wrap this up, man. I want to say to everybody on the show, everybody in the chat, I love you guys, man. I love you, Shawn. I love you, Triple R. I love you, Sam. I love Dr. West. I love Braggs. I love Chris, man. That's my guy. I love all you guys, man. And the reason why we do this show is because of you guys in the chat and you guys that are fans of the Bears. And it's natural for me to feel a certain kind of way about it. The feedback that we've been getting, the Nomad Network and the Nomad Live team, feedback is crazy. They love this stuff, man. And we can do nothing wrong so long as we produce quality content. We can't do anything wrong. And we're going to do it well. And so I just want to tell you guys, I love you guys, Shawn, and everybody else, man. The door swings open for just you can be looking at a show, Shawn. You can be looking at a show and say, you know what, I got something to say about that. And you get an invite. Get an invite. And you can come in that show anytime you want to, man. You know I appreciate you. Big time.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I just want you guys to know, man, keep the comments coming. Keep giving us respect. And we need to close the show because right now I'm going to get emotional and that ain't no good. I'm feeling a certain kind of way because the love is real, man. And so I want to just say thank you to everybody in the chat and all you guys that were involved in the show. Thank you, man, and see you next time. Hopefully on Sunday. We hope to be debuting Nomad at night. which would be a much more free flowing show. We can act the fool on that one. So look forward to that. Look forward to that on Sunday at the same time, 8 o'clock. Thank you guys, man.
I had to play it one more time, man. I worked too hard on that not to play it once.
I'm glad you did it, man, because I almost got emotional, man. Some of the feedback, man.
We're going to change your avatar to that crying Michael Jordan if you start getting emotional over there.
The feedback has been that real, man. Thank you, guys, man. I love you guys, and we'll see you Sunday, man. All right, let's go.
Right on. Appreciate you.